All right. Tuesday, July 6th, 2021, 6:31 p.m. I'll call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded and notes are being taken by Gail Hunter for minutes. So first thing on the agenda is if anybody has any comment for any items that are not on the agenda, I'll give you a minute to speak right now. Does anybody have any comment for items that are not on the agenda? If so, identify yourself and tell me what you want to talk about, and we'll give you a minute. All right, so we'll move on to our first item on the agenda, and that is the Board of Selectmen reorganization. So each year, this year is again a little bit unusual. Ordinarily, the way we have things laid out is that in April we have the annual town meeting, and then in May there are municipal elections. And the first meeting after the municipal elections, we do vote to organize the structure of the Board of Selectmen. So that's the chair and the vice chair. This year and last year, we did things differently because of, well, COVID. Because town meeting was delayed till June, we decided to keep me in place as chair until we got through town meeting. This is the first Board of Selectmen meeting, the regular Board of Selectmen meeting after town meeting. So we're having our reorganization vote now. And I said at the beginning of last year, when we had our workshop, I told the board that I would be chair for this year, but then not after this year. I'm in my third term, heading into my third year of my third term now. So it's time for somebody else, I think, to be chair. So we will be nominating somebody else to be the unfortunate bearer of this particular office. And well, I'll just get going. I think I'm going to nominate Jeff Bodmer Turner to be the poor sucker who has to do this job.
Second.
Oh, second from Ann Harrison. Yeah. Well, thank you, Ann. All right. Any discussion on this honorific?
I have some discussion here. Do the terms poor sucker and the other things that you said
Those are
apply
technical
to this
terms.
position?
Well,
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, no. Master General Law, Chapter 21, Section 4Z2. Yep, you can look it up after the meeting.
Out of the job description.
All right. Roll call vote. Ms. Jakes.
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner.
Abstain.
That's a good choice. Ms. Harrison.
Yes.
Mr. Round.
Artie, yes.
Mr. Bowling votes absolutely yes. Now you need a vice chair. Anybody care to make a nomination?
I would nominate Becky Jakes.
Second.
Any discussion?
Does poor sucker go with that description too?
Only when the first sucker is not available.
Okay. Asterisk.
Yeah. Mostly lucky. How about that? All right. Roll call vote. Ms. Jakes.
I'll follow suit and abstain.
Mr. Bodmer Turner.
Yes.
Ms. Harrison.
Yes.
Mr. Round.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Bowling votes yes. That takes us to 6:35 p.m. on the nose. For once in our tenure here. Yes, Ms. Harrison.
I thought you'd been replaced before you held the next election.
Me?
Yeah.
Point of order, Mr. Former Chair.
Another me? Oh, you mean the election of Becky?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we made a procedural error.
I suggest we ignore it.
I appreciate the.
Shall the minutes reflect that we did it properly?
Okay. So anyway, we pretty much finished on time for once for one of my meeting sessions. It's no longer my meeting, is now Mr. Bodmer Turner's meeting.
Mr. Bodmer Turner, a point of personal privilege, if you may.
Yes, sir, Mr. Wilson.
I just want to say, before you move on to your next order of business, and I think I can speak for everybody in town, thank you to Eli especially for his leadership during a very difficult year for so many reasons. And thank you to all of you for all you have done to lead us through the pandemic, through the SLV issue, through so many other things. There can't have been a more difficult year for Manchester's Board of Selectmen since maybe 1776.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. This is going to be real easy to be chair because that was my first order of business, was to say, it's with a great honor to try and fill Mr. Bowling's shoes. And I know it's going to be a challenge, but I will try and do my very best. But we all owe a great debt of gratitude to Eli for all the hard work that he's put in. And the board as a whole, I would agree, but Eli especially has put in tremendous work.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Yes.
Totally
we
agree.
thank him and we will give him the honorary you did it for 2 years gavel at some later date.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, so I'm going to do my best to try and keep up some modicum of order here. And we'll move on to our first order of business after the reorganization, which is a public hearing to establish water and sewer rates for FY22. I need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, so moved by Ann Harrison and seconded by Becky Jakes. We need to vote on that. So starting with Mr. Bowling,
I vote yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner votes yes. So we've now opened the water and sewer rates. I notice in our audience is Chuck Dam, and this is both to address rates and policy. The policies are summarized in the information received in your board book. But for the public, just very quickly, operational costs, the policy has two points, operational costs and capital cost, and identifies who pays for what. So sewer is 100% paid by users under the operational cost, and water is also 100% paid by users. Capital cost, sewer is 75% of the bonded capital cost is paid by users, and 25% is paid by all taxpayers in the town. Capital costs for water, 100% of the bonded capital cost is paid by all taxpayers. Rates have been set for fiscal year 2022. The proposed rate is $15.10 for sewer per 100 cubic feet. That last year it was $14.80. That's a 2% increase. And there is also a sewer only flat fee, which we will probably get into more discussion about in just a moment. Water rates are 2.25% increase across all tiers. And I'm not going to go through every single one of those. But if we just add 2.25% to last year, it's mostly like 14 cents for 100 cubic feet. That kind of a rise. The sewer capacity fee, we'll discuss in just a moment. So are there any questions that the board has about the rates and the policy, with the exception of the sewer only flat fee?
I don't have any questions. I have a comment. We redid the rates back in 2015 or 16 to establish a steeper gradient for the heavier water users in town. Periodically, we look at those again to see if we think we should be making any adjustments to the upper tiers or any of the tiers. I will note that most of our heavy usage comes in the summer months when when people tend to be irrigating more, and the vast bulk of our water usage comes from irrigation. It might behoove us to consider adding some, increasing the rates in one or two of the upper tiers, or at least making some calculations about the possible effects of doing that. If we want to provide some additional encouragement for people to cut back on the irrigation.
I would agree with that.
Okay, to do that, we would probably need to hold in abeyance what has been proposed and take a closer look at the upper tiers, defining which ones are the upper tiers and what kind of an increase, if any, would be done on top of the proposed 2.25%. So,
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
yes, ma'am.
At some point, I thought it was possible if you were on the sewer and water to have a second water meter that just served for irrigation and didn't count toward your sewer bill. Is that still the way that's billed? Chuck is nodding yes.
Yep, it's at the homeowner's option to do so. So they would pay for a plumber to install it, and we would read it. But so that is an option for people that are both on water and sewer.
It would certainly discourage irrigation if we charged them a sewer fee for it.
Which is typically why, the people that are going to be irrigating more, if they are on sewer, have probably already installed the irrigation meter.
Suppose we take away the ability to have an irrigation meter.
That would certainly catch some people's attention for sure.
It would. I think it also would hit people who are actually being fairly responsible with their outside irrigation. It's possible to do reasonable outside irrigation with soaker hoses and just hand watering and still make a fairly good dent in your water bill if you don't have to pay 2/3 of the price for sewer. So I'm not sure that's I think that might actually punish some people.
As well as the people who use too much.
Yeah. Chuck, how many people are in that category? And just for information, I'm one of them.
Yeah, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it is somewhere around 1,100, 1,200.
A significant number.
Irrigation meters. Yeah, it's significant. I don't know that it's using them. It could be that a lot of them, a lot of people have installed them and don't use the irrigation, but they at least have the ability.
So
that's off the top of my head.
You're saying 1,100 or 1,200 meters for irrigation only, not connected to sewer.
Well, they're likely connected to the sewer. They have the irrigation meter, so that that irrigation amount is deducted from their, call it master meter, and therefore their sewer bill.
Okay. Out of how many units in town that have water service?
I think it's around 2,500, if I'm not mistaken.
So about 40%.
Yeah, it's not quite half, but it's up there.
I would tend to agree with what Eli just said. And your comment is would save a lot of timely or time on breaking out top tiers and setting different rates for them. But I do think that it would have an impact on people who are trying their best to keep their irrigation low.
Perhaps we could consider deducting up to some level from, or rather, a lot, yeah, deducting up to some level of the irrigation, but not all of it. So as to get the people who are using irrigation heavily.
Yeah, I think you can get that by just hitting the top couple of tiers. If I can briefly explain how the tiers are constructed, the middle, there's the bottom two tiers. The bottom tier, well, the second tier is captures all the people up to the halfway point, the median point of water users in town. Half the people are using less than the upper bound of that tier, and half the people are using more. And then by half the people, I mean half the actual doors in town. The first tier is half of that. So those are people using really minuscule amounts of water. And then all the other subsequent tiers are stepped up through this extremely exponential curve of water usage. So the remaining 4 or 5 tiers or 4 tiers cover mostly the high-end water users, and they're designed to do that. So if you hit just the top 2 tiers, you're going to be hitting the people who are using mostly irrigation in the summertime, and that's borne out by the usage data mostly. There are a couple of outliers to that, but we've actually covered them with some previous abatements.
Question for Chuck. So Chuck, how much of the water is irrigation water? It goes through the irrigation.
I don't have that number, unfortunately. I can probably get it. The billing software is a little.
Well, I just wonder. I think it's a lot. I mean, I was wondering about saying for any particular address, if there are split meters, why don't I assume the water is charged on a per meter basis. So you're charged if you've got irrigation, whatever the number of cubic feet you've got on your irrigation meter, that's what you're charged. And then for your personal use that also has the sewer piece to it, whatever you use. And if for a given address, you put it all together.
That's not exactly how it works. So in reality, what happens is the irrigation meter is only deducting the sewer amount from it. So you have 2 meters at that point. You have your, what we call a master meter. That's calculating all of the water used for that entire address. And then whatever goes through that second meter, you still get charged for that water, but you don't get charged for that equivalent amount of sewer.
Oh, so it's already doing that.
So that's what you're deducting. I would say the other thing about only saying you're going to charge the sewer on those accounts is actually, I believe it or not, most of the people at the upper tier, as Eli say, are not necessarily on sewer as well. So the people in the top 2 tiers are a lot of larger estates that are not on, in the town core area. So they're the ones using a lot of the water. So they don't have a sewer bill to begin with.
Okay, that's a good observation. Thank you.
Yep.
Eli, since you are the expert on this, what would you suggest increasing for an increase for the upper 2 tiers?
There you got me. There I need to actually do a little bit more data crunching and chat with Chuck, I think.
Yeah.
So if we want to do that, I'd recommend that we delay making our final decision on the.
If I might offer one additional point of reference here that I've talked a little bit to Greg about, and I might have mentioned it in passing to Eli, but our water registration, which was quite a point of, I'll call it a flashpoint in town this year with the given, where we have, allocating all of our water use, and what if we have future development here or there, and where are we with respect to our water registration. our water registration is in the process of being renewed right now. It will not be renewed until December, but there's a very high likelihood that when the state declares a drought within our region, which is indicative of what's going on at our sources, but in our region, that we will be required to institute mandatory irrigation outdoor watering bans. So whether or not people follow them is another matter, but we as a department and as a town will be requiring and telling our users not to irrigate when we're in those drought periods as determined by the state, not as determined by us. So if that comes to fruition, there's a high likelihood again that our outdoor watering across the board will go down, and therefore our corresponding revenue will go down. So it might be just another kind of thought would be to table this one until we have this conversation a year from now, or study it in the coming year and with an eye on December, which is when our registration will be renewed and may or may not have those conditions. So just another thought.
So Chuck, are you saying that when the registration is renewed, that in between now and then the state may put in a water ban for our district?
So the registration will be renewed in December. That's not up for debate.
Yep.
The amount of water that we're allowed to withdraw from our well and from the treatment plant, Gravelly Pond behind me in the picture, will not change. However, when the state declares a drought emergency, which they've done several times this year already, believe it or not, then all water users with registration, so not just Manchester necessarily, but all of them, would have to issue outdoor watering bans. So you might have driven through Ipswich or Hamilton or Wenham, where you see these required outdoor watering bans, and as you're coming into town or something like that, we would have the equivalent, whether or not we really believe that we are in a drought, according to the level in our reservoir that are well. It's a highly likely that will happen, as a matter of fact, but it's still not final.
And that could go into effect at any time.
Well, it'll be part of our new registration, which happens in December. So like I said, they have already, the state in their new drought plan, which was effective in 2019, has declared several droughts in our region. You see it on the news every once in a while. It hasn't been something for DPW or the town to, take any further because it's not part of our water registration. We do keep an eye, a very close eye on our reservoir levels, but it's not necessarily something that we have to enforce, but will be in the future. So I'm looking at next summer will be when this comes to fruition.
And how long will that ban be in place?
Until the state says it's no longer a drought emergency, which has several different factors, fire danger across the watershed, and things that are somewhat unrelated necessarily to, like I said, the level in our reservoir or the drawdown in our well.
So we actually do have some data that will allow us to project what the impact of something like that to water usage and our revenue would be like. It's not perfect, but I think it was back in 2015. We had severe drought across the state, and we did in fact have mandatory, and I mean really hard mandatory. You cannot irrigate. Took a little bit while for it to ramp up, but we do have actual usage data in town based on what the result of that was. So we can probably make some projections with a little bit of work.
So if I may, Jeff, I think what that really says to us is that for now, we should probably go with those across the board tier increases as proposed and use the coming months to do a deeper dive on the higher tiers and to think about what the impact may be for our new registration and having the state declaring emergencies more often.
So you're suggesting that we keep the rates where they're proposed for the next year and take a real close look at it in terms of a proposal to increase the top tiers next year.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Eli, you were kind of moving to do that this year.
I was, but I can't really argue with Chuck and Greg's position on this. I think it's probably the little bit wiser to just hold where we are and spend the time doing a little bit more math.
When do these rates go into effect?
So these would be
Basically going to-
the next billing quarter, which is July and August, I believe.
Like now? Like,
Correct.
like they're in effect 6 days ago, or they'll be retroactive to that?
Well, we're billing we're billing right now or in the last week or so. So those will be at the previous rates.
Oh, okay, so
The-
it's not calendar
Going
months.
forward, the next bill you receive, so that should theoretically be in September and we'll read probably in August, that will be where you see this increase. So we do have time to do more math now. It's just it all might be moot in 6 months.
Yeah, I don't think we should delay because, oh, wait, no, you're finishing up the readings now. Yeah,
Can I suggest that we pass the policy and the rates now? And then discuss the sewer capacity fee?
yeah, I think that's probably the right thing.
Okay, but in that suggestion, Ann, are you including the flat rate fees?
Just policy and rates, the number 1 and number 2.
But that includes the sewer only flat fee.
No, yes, I'm sorry, it does. Okay, no, then I guess we're not ready to do that. Right,
Okay, the sewer only flat fee is going to be a discussion, and are we wanting to have that discussion tonight? And try and wrap all the rates and policy up tonight? Board members?
I'd like to start the discussion if it's all right. We may need to go back and think about it, but we've got several ways of dealing with the flat fees. And I think we ought to explore them now.
Okay. We're already a bit behind in our agenda time. But what I'd like to do is limit this to 10 minutes and see where we are and whether we can have clarity at that point to make a decision or whether we need more information. Greg, is it possible to pull out the flat rate and make a decision on the remaining rates and the policy tonight?
Yes, so you could bifurcate it that way.
Okay, so let's take the next 10 minutes to have first Chuck give a brief synopsis of this rate structure, and then the board ask any questions of that, and see if we can do that in 10 minutes. And then at the end of the 10 minutes, I'm going to call for a motion one way or the other to pull out flat rates and continue that discussion at another time and pass on the policy and other rates or not. So go ahead, Chuck.
It's very simple. There's 9 accounts that have no water meter. They have their own private wells, but they are on town sewer. So they've been assessed a sewer only flat fee. I noticed when I first started a couple of years ago that flat fee was very low, but we thought it was low because they hadn't increased it, the 2% that you see this year, going back the 6 or 7 years. And so we retroactively, figured out what the number would have been. That's how we got to the 183.78 per quarter, but that's extremely low. Especially you can imagine, as you see in the 9 accounts, it ranges from a 2-bedroom house to a 10-bedroom house. So theoretically, there's a lot more usage at a 10-bedroom that there would be at a 2-bedroom, and everywhere in between. So this is my attempt to rectify that, which is that flat fee had not been applied per bedroom, which I think was the intent. But I think that if you assess the Title V, which is 110 gallons per day per bedroom, and do that math, that's very high in terms of actual usage. I don't think anybody, that's what they use to size septic systems, which, are oversized because they want to make sure the septic leaches. In this situation, the flow is going to the plant through our system. It's not really apples and apples. So my solution to that was to apply a $118 per bedroom per quarter fee and do the math out that way per bedroom. That was just one way to do it. You could, as I said in the memo, just arbitrarily raise the flat fee something more than 2%, which I think is very reasonable. Or you could go with, basically what I think the assumption was, which was the 110 gallons per day per bedroom. So that's what you see in the numbers there, kind of what it would be, give or take, with those different fees. And, if you wanted to take any percentage of that, I think it would be reasonable as well.
Okay, I have a question, which is this proposed rate of 118, is that related to the 65 gallons per bedroom per day?
Yeah, so 118 would be that number, doing the math out for 65 gallons per bedroom per day per quarter.
And how did you come up with 65 gallons?
So 65 is, a DEP, AWWA kind of threshold for what is normal personal usage. So that obviously doesn't get into if you had irrigated use or something like that, although that wouldn't be going to the sewer anyway. So 65 gallon per capita per day is the benchmark that DEP would like to see across your system. So it's a relatively reasonable number in terms of what one person would actually use. Where the math breaks down a little bit is using that 65 per gallon per capita per day and applying it per bedroom, because theoretically people could have unoccupied bedrooms that we don't know about. But like I said, they've been basically only being assessed one this whole time.
So what does that, Chuck, what does that work out to cost-wise on a quarterly basis then per bedroom?
So on the low end, if you're a 2-bedroom and we're assessing you 65 gallon per day per bedroom, you're at a roughly $236 per quarter versus the $187 now. So a modest increase for a 2-bedroom.
Okay,
all the way up to, if you get to a 10-bedroom, you're looking at an $1,100 bill versus your previous $183 bill.
So it's that one.
10-bedroom is big.
Yeah, so it's that 118 that you've got there in the that I see in the notes, $118 per quarter per bedroom.
Correct.
That's proposed.
That's
proposed
kind of
flat.
where we would do the math. And because it's such a small subset, we can manipulate the billing software to basically assign the number of bedrooms times the per capita rate. It's fairly easily done. Whereas if this were, 200 units, I might be saying we should do it differently, but.
That's not actually a per capita rate, it's a per bedroom rate.
Per bedroom, right.
Bedroom rate, correct. Yeah, sorry.
Do you know what it would cost approximately to install the meter that you'd suggested as one of the alternatives?
So the cost of the meter and the MXU is $400 to $500, depending on the size of the meter. So that's, that would be a minimum. The town, the water department, sewer department could foot that bill, but the plumber, plumbers are pretty expensive and they take, it's harder for people to get them sometimes. So, I'm thinking it should be roughly $1,000, maybe $1,500 to $2,000 if it's a pretty substantial install. But that's the expense that people already undertake when they install an irrigation meter. So it's a similar exercise to installing an irrigation meter. You're getting a better rate, so it's worth your while to pay for the meter.
Yeah, particularly if you're using bedrooms for offices and things like that.
Sure.
And you've got two
Exactly.
people living in 6 bedrooms and
Yeah, exactly.
You'd save that pretty quickly.
So that's an avenue for them to kind of get out of that if they so choose.
And there's no problem. How do you meter sewage?
So we would actually do it the same way you're metering your house now is, we don't actually meter your sewage. We meter, or we charge you for the sewer rate based on your water meter. So it'd be a similar, like I said, exactly the same situation that everybody else in town has.
So you put a meter on their well.
Yeah, so that presumably the well comes into a basement, just like the service from the public water system comes into a basement, and the plumber would install a meter at that location, just like the water.
And how do they, Chuck, then separate out irrigation use?
I guess in that situation, we would need an irrigation meter.
So when the 1,100 properties that you mentioned that have irrigation meters install those, do they have separate water system for just irrigation?
Well, typically there's a spot where the plumbing goes outside to a hose spigot or something and that's where they branch off to do the irrigation. So you just have to meter that one line going to that one spigot. So that's where the meter goes. If it's more complex than that, then the plumber needs to figure it out for the current use people.
Okay, so there is an avenue where they could opt out by installing a sewer meter for all use from the well and separating out irrigation with a second meter.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? Do you feel like we have enough information to make a proposed motion regarding water and sewer rates, including flat rates, flat fee rates?
Well, these folks knew this was on the agenda here tonight, correct?
Well, if they read the agenda, but
These 9 people.
Well, if you read the agenda simply says establish water and sewer rates. For
Right.
FY22. It doesn't specify that we're going to be discussing flat rate users.
Right.
So my thought about this is to split out flat rate users and confirm with a clear motion in our next meeting what we're doing about that.
Okay.
And to do a motion on the policy and on the sewer rates other than flat fee and the water rates and the sewer capacity fee.
Well, it's only 9 folks. I'm just wondering if a note should be sent to all of them and say, look, we're going to vote on this next time.
Yes.
Not that I'm asking for a lot of noise, but there could be. But people need to know that. I'm just afraid if we put this through tonight, there might be people that might be up in arms, say, you didn't tell me.
I think that's correct, John, and I
Right.
would rather not try and slip this in.
Right.
It's not being slipped in. It was on our
No.
agenda, but it's not really clear to the public that we're going to be discussing the flat fee rates.
Correct.
So can I get a motion to set the rates for FY22? First, set the policy and to set the rates for FY22 with the exception of sewer only flat fee.
So moved.
Ma'am, make a quick point of order. This is a public hearing, so I think you probably need to ask if there's any input from the public.
Thank you, Mr. Balling, for your guidance. Is there any public comment on the rates that we're talking about and the proposal that we're making to confirm flat fee rates on our July 19th meeting. Okay. And let's go back to our motion.
I moved the motion.
A second, if it wasn't seconded.
Okay, so that's moved by Becky Jakes and seconded by John Round.
Does that include, sorry, does that include the sewer capacity fee?
That's the flat fee rate.
No, the sewer
That's
capacity
separate.
fee is separate. It's number 3.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I did include the sewer capacity fee in my statement of the motion.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure that Gail was able to get that motion because we've been going around in a lot of different details. So Gail,
I have it.
thank you,
I
Gail.
have it.
You are Wonder
You're
Woman.
welcome. Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
It is. Okay, so do we close the hearing and then vote on the proposal?
I think you actually need to continue the hearing. Although Greg,
Close the evidentiary portion of the hearing, and then you vote on your motion. However, in this case, you're continuing the hearing for the purposes of the flat rate on the sewer.
Okay, so I am going to hold back on the motion that was just made and take a motion to close the evidentiary portion of the hearing regarding policy and rates, with the exception of the sewer-only flat fee rate.
And the sewer capacity fee, including.
Yes, that's, yes.
so
So
moved.
moved.
And a second.
So moved by Becky Jakes and seconded by John Round. All in favor of closing the evidentiary portion of the hearing? I'm going to go by individual votes. So I'll start with Ms. Harrison. Ann,
Yes,
John,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling,
Yes,
Mr. Bodmer Turner votes yes. Now, before we go to vote on that rate motion, I would like to have a vote to continue the portion of our water and sewer rate hearing for sewer-only flat fees until our meeting on the 19th.
so
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, so the motion was moved by Ann Harrison and seconded by John Round. Any discussion? Okay, so this is a vote to close, to continue the portion of the hearing that has to do with flat fees. Ms. Harrison,
Yes,
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Mr. Bowling,
yes,
Mr. Bodmer Turner votes yes. Now we'll take up the motion that was made previously and held until we close the hearing, which is to raise the sewer rates by 2% and the water rates by 2.25% across all tiers. And the sewer capacity fee
Stays the same.
stays the same. So we have that motion. And is there any discussion of that motion? Okay, then let's have the vote. Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
yes,
Mr. Bowling,
Yes.
Mr. Bob McDermott votes yes. Okay, so that will be an agenda item. The flat rate fees will be an agenda item at our meeting on the 19th. Moving on. We have board and committee interviews. And tonight, we have interviews for the Bike and Pedestrian Committee. We have interview for the Conservation Commission, Downtown Improvement Committee, and Welcome to Manchester. So I'm going to start with the Welcoming Committee, and is Melanie DiBiasio? Melanie? Where'd you go? There you are.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes. Welcome to.
Great.
Um,
Thank you.
and if you could just give a quick summary of your interest in this position and any relevant experience, I'd appreciate that.
Sure. Yeah. So thanks for meeting with me today. I just moved to Manchester just over a year ago, and came from Beverly. Had been there for 7 years. My family is you know, there are 5 of us. My husband's actually interviewing for one of the other committees, so we're right now juggling the children. So I have not served on any volunteer committees for any of the towns or cities that I've lived in before, but am interested in getting to know the people that are volunteering to make our community better. And given that I have just joined the town, I feel like I have a good perspective on what it is to come to Manchester and be welcomed here, which has been actually very welcoming, much more welcoming than any other town or city that I've moved to before. So I'd like to give back to the community and get to know the people that are in the community.
Well, it's good to hear that your experience of moving into town was so positive. Do any board members have any questions for Melanie?
Yeah, I've got a question for Melanie. And Jeff, may I
Go ahead.
have the floor? And Melanie, thanks for volunteering. It's wonderful that we've got so many residents in town that raise their hand and want to contribute to town government. I think that your qualification, key qualification, is you've been here 1 year, so you have opinions about what worked and what didn't work. And was there some reason that you picked out the Welcoming Committee? I mean, there are several committee assignments that are kind of open, and I don't know if you just kind of went on the website and said, okay, what's available, or why in particular? Is there something specifically that you want to address in the welcoming activity or area?
Sure. Yeah. You're right. I looked at what's available and where do I think that I can contribute. I am in management at a biotech company, and one of the things that I have to do there is to introduce new employees to the department that I manage, and that part is very rewarding. And I like to brag about the company that I work for, just like I like to brag about the town that I live in and the community that I'm in. So I think that that's what attracted me to that particular position. It is a unique community in this area and in Massachusetts. So that I want to share that with everyone that comes to Manchester and make it known to them. It's not immediately, all that it has to offer is not immediately obvious when you come into town.
Good, thank you. I'm glad to hear we're doing a lot of things right.
Any other board members have a question?
If I may, Becky,
No, go ahead, Ann. Thank you, though.
can you give some specific things that you would want, should have known when you first moved in, or that you think, or that you did find out quickly, but you think other people ought to know?
So yeah, I mean, as a resident coming in, silly things like what day do I put my trash out? You know, what day, you know, what are the requirements for recycling? Just simple like household needs that you try to wrap your head around when you first move into town. Things like that. I think that information is available, but we have to hunt a little bit for it. Had to make some phone calls and get some information that, and when we made the phone calls, everyone was extremely pleasant and willing to help, but, you know, making that information more readily available would be helpful for new residents coming in. Just details about Singing Beach and what's the history of the town and why is, you know, what are some of the names in the streets that you see and where did that come from? We've been, you know, finding that information and talking to people as we come along, but there are a lot of hidden gems and things that that you get when you talk to people around town, and it would be nice to have that information, you know, more apparent for new residents.
Thank you. No other question.
Okay, Becky, you had a question, and we need to keep this moving.
I actually did not have a question, but I did want to say thank you for tossing your hat in the ring, Mel.
Sure.
Okay, so Eli?
Yeah, Melanie, did you, have you already been in touch with other members of the existing welcoming committee?
Nope,
did they-
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not aware of anybody that's on that committee.
Actually, excuse me, Eli.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Christine Matrano from the Welcome Committee. Melanie, I just wanted to welcome you and thank you for coming on board. We've done a lot of work this year and we'd love to have an extra set of hands because we've been really busy and trying to answer all those questions that you have. We've started the welcome baskets that have been very successful and different resources. We started an ambassador program to connect new people with existing residents. So we've done a huge amount of work and we would love some help. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
just so that you understand the board's process with appointments to committees, Melanie, we do an interview and then the following meeting that we have, we actually do the appointment.
Okay.
So if we have multiple candidates, it gives everybody a chance to put in their information, but the interviews are tonight. So, and I have one question for you, which is that there are 3 terms available and you are the first person who's come forth on this. A usual term is a 3-year term. There is a 1-year term and a 2-year term available as well. So which of those 3 would you like to take if you are appointed?
The 2-year term, I think.
The
So
one
right
in the middle. Okay. Okay, great. So we will take this up in our July 19th meeting. And generally, those votes go pretty quickly. Okay.
All right,
So
thank you.
Thank you very much for your interest and your application for that committee.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. We have 2 candidates for Downtown Improvement Committee. And there are 2 positions, both are 1-year terms. The first that I'm going to take up is Marlene Dolan. Marlene, are you available? Can you unmute yourself? Hi.
Hi.
Okay. Just very briefly, can you say what leads you to have an interest in joining the Downtown Improvement Committee?
I can. I was Over the past several months, as I sat through the meetings where we discussed the SLV project and especially the kind of impact it might have on the town, let alone our drinking water and the environmental concerns. When I read how many cars could possibly come into town and the impact it would have on the character and just the character and the nature of our community, I realized that it's the town itself, like the downtown itself, is an ecosystem too. And I come from a family of small business owners. I've always been interested in commerce. I just retired from a 14-year career at Fidelity Investments last Wednesday. So I find myself with, for the first time ever, time on my hands, and I'm not in Boston till 8 o'clock at night. And I'm real happy about that. So this is kind of like my city. I've lived here 20 years and enjoy the town immensely.
Okay, great. Board members, do you have any specific questions that you want to address with Marlene?
Hi, Marlene.
Hi.
John?
Yeah, no, Marlene, have you spoken with anybody on the committee, the Downtown Improvement Committee?
I didn't think that it would be appropriate. So again, I grew up in HR. So I'm an
Yeah.
HR person. So I didn't know what the rules are on that. And I wanted to, follow the program.
Sure.
I did give, I was supposed to go for a walk this morning with Susan Beckman. So I asked her a little bit about what's going on, but that's just about it.
Okay.
I can do so.
We'd encourage you to do so. Reach out to those, anybody. Let's see, who chairs that? Steve Carhart, I think.
Steve Carhart.
Yeah, I know him well. So,
Yeah.
yeah, you could reach out and see what
Okay.
kind of ideas they have, and maybe how that might mesh with ideas that are perhaps percolating in your mind as well. But thank you very much for volunteering. And now that you're retired, we're expecting big things. You've got lots of time.
Well, I appreciate it. And hopefully we weren't too noisy the other night for 4th of July and you didn't hear us down the street there.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, so Marlene, over the years, you've observed the changes to the downtown because you've been here for a while. And Downtown Improvement Committee was involved with some of the initial changes downtown and subsequent, they had a little bit of a hand in a town common and some of the intersection changes. What are some of the good things that you've seen and some of the things that you think could use improvement in the process and the type of changes that have been made over the years?
So none of this is on the current agendas, Eli, that I've been seeing, except one of the surveys I read talked about the revenue. So I'm concerned about the revenue that's coming into the town for the small business owners. And I know that COVID was very hard on everyone, no matter the size, but I guess, so I'll start with what I see as the issue I have is there's only so much storefront space. I don't know what the affordability of it is, but you want to have an affordable place for small business owners, especially these micro businesses, to set up shop and run a business that they can, create a living on. Some of the things that I've seen lately, I think that the front of the Newtown Green is unbelievable. I think that the park, I know this isn't our part, but the downtown, but I think that what Bayon's done with the whole dockage system and that park is much more used. I like that. I love all the new plantings that you've done. And I'm really excited to read about the fact that you're concerned about the sea level rise and what that might do to our streets, because we are pretty low there. And I think that is a big concern. I do love the way that they turn the street around going to our church. That's so much better going that way. It really helps. I will say that the bump out areas, I think, are better for pedestrians and worse for cars. And, there's a lot of talk about that right now. And the goal is to make things good enough for cars. And I see that parking is an issue. Good enough for cars, but you want it to be really great for people. But bikes and people and children. So, the safety and people's ability to get around, I think is top priority in my mind.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? All right. Marlene, you're in luck because there are 2 positions open and they're both one-year terms, so you don't have to make the difficult decision that Melanie had to make.
I'm really happy. And I figure if it doesn't work out and everybody can't stand working with me, they'll only have to bear me for a year.
I doubt very much that they would have trouble working with you. So again, we will be voting on this in 2 weeks on the 19th. And thank you for stepping forward.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right. We have a second interview for downtown improvement with Brandon Lamphier. If I didn't butcher his last name, I hope he'll unmute himself.
Perfectly fine. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So a little bit about myself. I've been, my family goes back to the Revolutionary War in this magical town in 1630 cemetery. My grandfather owned the upholstery shop downtown. So for decades, I worked for him. I grew up on Summer Street and I left for a while. Now I have 2 children. I've just purchased a home on Norwood Ave. So I am, I've been in town for a couple of years now, but just purchased a home and I can't really complain if I'm not involved. So in my opinion, so, it's one of those things where I grew up in Powder House Hill with my dogs, you know what I mean? Like my grandparents' dogs, my parents' dogs, like I grew up Manchester Woods, Agassiz Rock. I was a Boy Scout. With Troop 3, and we were up at Round Pond, like camping and doing all those sort of things. So the Conservation Committee is something that I'm very interested in, especially that. And the Downtown Improvement Committee is also something I'm interested in because of I've seen the changes. Like I grew up with a family that literally had the downtown, business. My grandfather was a cornerstone business in this town for many years. It was, I've lived right downtown. I've seen the changes, and I'm not opposed to change in any way, shape, or form as long as it's done, logically and spelled out. So that's me.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any board members have any questions that they want to ask?
Yeah, one initial one. Conservation Commission or Downtown Improvement? Which of these 2 are we sort of looking at these simultaneously, or?
We're going to look at them in sequence, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought this was a joint.
Oh.
So Brandon is interviewing for both of them, or?
He is interviewing for both of them.
To serve simultaneously, or to be chosen for one or the other?
I'd like both. I have the time and the wherewithal to be able to, hopefully serve both.
Okay, well, and since I'm talking, I'll just dovetail into my first question, if that's okay with the chair.
It is okay with the chair.
So same questions I asked Marlene. You've seen number changes over the years in town. What are the good things? What are the bad things? What would you like to see done differently in terms of the things the downtown improvement project has affected? What are you things that you think it should be doing?
So I'm a big supporter of small business, but I also believe that real estate prices going up helps everybody, right? I mean, we want businesses that thrive to stay into where they are. I think that that's what we have done with downtown. There's very few vacancies. There's very few. It's a great. I go to the bookstore with my children. I go to a restaurant and have a day. I'm a very good. I literally purchased my home from one of the largest landowners in the downtown area. Like they're thriving in this situation, and even with what we've seen. If I have one criticism, it's honestly, it's as small as the stop sign on Union Street. I think it should be moved out like 10 feet because I stop and then I inch out, right? And I get that. I mean, maybe it's because of where the crosswalks lined up. It's one of those things where you're like, I understand that there's a process that you have to go through. I think it's very excellent what has happened with the Reed Park. And as she's the woman before me cited, that what he's doing there. And so I've actually spoke to him about some of his plans. I've spoke to some of the people on the board about what they think, and Carly and some of the other, their friends of mine. And I want to see what happens coming up. It's never drastic, it's incremental. So I'm looking at that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other board members?
Thank you for stepping up
Yes.
doubly.
Why, thank you.
Okay, so since you're applying for both this and Conservation Commission, would you like to just give us a very quick synopsis? Because we're way behind on our schedule.
Yep.
But I want to give you an opportunity to share with people at the meeting and with the town what your interest is in the Conservation Commission.
So I find it very, because of where we live and what I've lived in other places, and we have the resource that we have here with, again, Round Pond, Manchester Woods, Agassiz Rock, like Powder House Hill, all the great places that we have. I own a boat, we're out fishing all the time. Like, and again, that's probably what Big and Little Ram is probably us and not anything else, but still we have the harbor, we have all some of the greatest resources that we've ever seen. And I want to be able to have a say in it for my children. I have a 6 and an 8-year-old. I brought them into this town to live here and to grow up as I did. And the resources that I did, I want to be able to have a say in how we protect. That's all.
Okay. Any questions from the Board of Selectmen?
I do, if I may.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. Mr. Is it Lamphier?
Lamphier, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for signing up for 2 different committees. And with the Conservation Commission, it sometimes you can sometimes have to deal with neighbors or people, and when it comes to private property, we can all get a little overzealous when it comes to our own. And it's just not always easy to have to make some of the decisions. And have you given that any thought or looked into what type of meetings and input you'd be having on the Conservation Commission?
Yes, so I've gone through it with, my family went through it on Harold Street with putting an in-law apartment on the back. There were 3 feet in the watershed area. We understood that. I just pulled a permit here on Norwood Ave to put in a swimming pool. I wasn't in there, right? And luckily, one of the things that I think I have more than a lot of people is that I'm an emotional intelligence trainer. So I understand when to recognize people's emotions and hopefully try and everyone gets emotional, especially like you said about their own property. And if we can be kind and considerate to them and know that, and yet still deal with it as this is what we have to do. This is our end, but we're going to do it. We're not going to do it as a bulldozer. We're going to do it, with daisies, I hope. So that's what, I understand the finesse of that sort of thing. I have sat in on some meetings with my father, especially. He's definitely not emotionally intelligent in that way, but we manage it, right? We manage our family members, we manage our neighbors, we do what we can to exist. So, and I think that is one of the traits that I might have, that is that being able to look at a situation and know that we're not going to do it with a hammer, we're going to do it with a feather duster or something, something of that nature, because you'll still get to the same place. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
if I may.
Yes.
Go ahead, Ann.
The Conservation Commission is one of the more technical boards in town. It's involved with lots of legal issues. It's not just that they're legal issues and you can work around them. It's their legal issues and you have to follow them and you have to understand them. And ordinarily, if I were looking for a candidate for that commission, I would want somebody with some background in land use law, or something related to that. What do you have that will make me recognize that you belong?
Probably not much, to tell you the truth, to be honest with you. I will tell you that, oh, go ahead.
What I was going to say is your interests sound more like the open space and recreation. But we certainly need people who can work with people in the conservation area.
Correct. So I have 2 years of architecture school. So I can read plans. I can tell you what a plot plan looks like. I can tell you fairly easily, reading it on that well. I'm also part of what I've done. You know, I manage a group of people and for a Fortune 500 company. I can tell you that I don't make decisions without doing as much research as humanly possible. So when it comes down to what it is, and I'm fairly well read and I can read what it is that pertains to that situation, hopefully, and say, this is what has to be done. And again, we're not trying to work around it. We're trying to conform in that situation, especially in a lot of these places. It's conservation law, from what I gather and have talked to friends, is that it's like you said, it's fairly spelled out. This is what we have to do when we are in these certain situations. So there's not much gray area. So we hope that it is, and hopefully I'm smart enough to do the research and communicate to what needs to be communicated. And that's where I think my strength will be.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Other board members?
Yeah, if I may, Jeff.
Go ahead, John.
Yes, okay, good. And Brandon, thanks for raising your hand. Just one question. I was just curious. I mean, again, several different openings in town, and you're an outdoors guy. That comes through. There's no question, and that's certainly important as an aspect, I think, for serving on Conservation Commission. But what specifically attracted you to that committee here?
So one of my childhood baseball coach here in town was Michael Dyer, and he's on the Conservation Commission, not commission, but he's sends out the newsletter. Yes, exactly. And I've known him for years, and he kind of instilled in me that as a fairly young age. I think it was a fourth grader. What also brought me to me is that it is, again, it's that love of the outdoor space. It's also the being able to have a say. That's all. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be a reasonable say in everything, in my opinion. And by the end, we follow the law, but there's a reasonable interpretation of all of it. And I hope that is what I could bring to the table, as well as a communication aspect of it. But it was probably Doc that brought me to the table when it came to that whole thing, because I know it's been one of his things forever, and his photography and such like that is always gave me a great appreciation for what it takes. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Eli, Becky?
Ann covered my questions. I'm good.
Becky?
Already asked. Thank you.
Okay. So the Conservation Committee has one opening, and it's a 3-year position. Is that a problem for you?
Oh, just bought a house. I have young children. I think I'm going to be here for at least the next 13 years. So, yes.
Okay. Like I said, we will be voting on these appointments on the 19th. And we very much appreciate your candid answers to the questions that the board has had. And we will finalize our decision at that time.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're about 15 minutes behind schedule, but we're cruising through towards the end here. We have 3 interviews for Bike and Ped Committee. I see one position, but Greg, I wanted to raise to you. Amy Coleman and Terry Cowman are supposed to be going off the board in 2021. Did they decide that they wanted to re-up for another 3 years, or you're muted, Greg?
I believe that's so. I'll have to double check. If Sonia, I believe Sonia's on, she might have that information with her, or we'll get back to you on that.
Okay. So Sonia, if you have that information, could you unmute yourself and let us know, or if you don't, unmute yourself and let us know? Sonia's on break. Okay, so to the 3 people who are interviewing, there may be 1 position available. There may be as many as 3. So we will have that information the next time we meet and make our final decisions. So I'm going to start with David Saunders. David, could you unmute yourself? And
hi, everyone.
Thank you. Go ahead and tell us, David, what draws you to serving on the bicycle. I got to stop calling it the bike committee, the bicycle and pedestrian committee.
Yeah, I mean, we're new. We're new residents of town. We moved in February. We bought a house on Pleasant Street, but we've lived in Manchester several times in the last 18, 20 years. We have 3 kids. One's going to be a senior in high school, and the other going to be moving into 8th grade. We are avid. I'm sorry?
Bless you.
Yeah. I mean, we're outdoors all the time, walking all the time. When I say I'm filling out the volunteer form, I do bike, but I'm not a cyclist. I'm not doing the Pan Am Challenge, or I'm not that type of cyclist. I'm much more of I want to get on my bike and be able to go downtown, to go to Crosby's or go to the library. I'm much more of a informal cycler. But I am a very avid hiker and pedestrian. And so having moved into town in winter and having walked many, many, many miles since then, I've been really keen to try and identify ways that we could make our streets, sidewalks, and downtown area more enjoyable for pedestrians and for people on bicycles, tricycles, unicycles, but also, to increase the overall physical and mental health of everyone. Certainly in the last 18 months or so, we've seen more and more people outside, whether they're riding bikes or riding their penny boards or just walking around. And so I feel that being a part of a committee that's really focused on helping to prioritize the everyday experiences of, yes, top tier competitive cyclists, but also kids and everyone in between who are using our sidewalks and streets for a variety of different reasons. And so I would love to be, as Brendan said, be a part of it, so I have a voice. As Marlene said, I think it's really important for us to think about how holistically we're creating conversations between these committees, so that when we're talking about downtown, we're keeping in mind pedestrians and cyclists as well. So I'm excited to be a part of the conversation and to talk with you about how I can help serve the town.
Thank you. And thank you for stepping forward. Any members of the Board of Selectmen have questions?
I've got one, Jeff, if I may, Dave, and I echo Jeff. Thanks for raising your hand and volunteering to serve on this committee. You said you've got some opinions or ideas. Have you got one that you'd like to kind of institute right away, or that you think is something that we should do?
Yeah, I mean, my perspective on Pleasant Street over the last several months is that once winter turned over, we saw a whole train of kids riding their bikes down Pleasant Street to go to school in the morning. And it's fabulous. And often they have one adult, sometimes two adults kind of as chaperones, but the kids are kind of being picked up. It's almost like a bicycle bus. It's so great. But once they hit the intersection at School Street, that's a tough place because the cars coming into town have a bit of an obstructed view and they can't see the kids and got a lot of false starts. And every time I see it, I'm just worried that some kid is going to get hit on their bike. And I'm wondering if it'd be possible to put a crossing guard at that place if we know that there's going to be a consistent, volume use of bikes moving forward into the fall term, and then probably on the other end next spring as well.
Okay.
Thought about that too. It's a good idea.
Mhm.
Any
Thank
other
you.
board members? I'm sorry, John, did you have another
Nope,
question?
nope, thank you.
Any other board members have questions?
No, I'm good. I will observe that Al Sentner has his hand raised, and he might have information about the board openings.
Okay, Al, thank you for joining us. And if you want to, no, you're
Yes,
unmuted.
no, I'm here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Al Sentner, I'm the chair of the Bike and Ped Committee, and also live on School Street. Welcome to those prospective new members. Your question you posed a moment ago, Mr. Chairman, on the openings on the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, Terry and Amy Coleman have opted to re-up. I can tell you that, extend their 2021 terms for another term. I did also look at our charter, which is really not, there's nothing etched in stone. And I also looked at the town bylaws as to the number of people allowed on our committee, and there is nothing written. There's nothing etched in stone on that, on a cap on the number of board members. So from our perspective, and I have discussed this with the other committee members, we would welcome all three members with open arms. Part of what we do and part of what drives the committee is public input anyway. So we would more than welcome the participation of these three new members on the Bike and Ped.
That does raise an issue, Al, in terms of votes of the committee, since you would have an even number, and
I did think of that.
Could be deadlocked in terms of making decisions.
Yeah, I know. I did think of that when we came up with that 10 number. It's always better to have an odd number. I guess that's one of those things that
I count 9, including the vacancy right now. Am I wrong?
There are, I believe if you approve all three of these new members, Darcy, Jay, and David, that'll bring our total to 10, which gives us that.
Okay, so the website needs to be updated.
Yeah, it does.
Is Freddie still a member?
Freddie is still, so Aileen O'Rourke is no longer with us. Parker Harrison is no longer with us. So those are 2 slots that need to be filled.
I don't even see Parker Harrison on the website, so.
Okay, his did go through then.
I have Freddie, Kurt, you.
Yes.
Susan.
Yes.
Dana, Amy, Terry, and you just said Aileen is off the committee now.
Yes, she's resigned just recently.
And the vacancy. So, that would leave 2 openings for 9, and then if the third person came in, you would have deadlock.
We would have that
potential
possibility of deadlock.
Potential.
Yeah, the potential for deadlock, which you know, I appreciate that, that dilemma. But would hope that it would not be something that would prevent participation of a volunteer, just based on the possibility that the committee could deadlock in a vote. We would, I think, as a committee, find a way to not have that happen, to discuss it further if we came up with a 5-5, to discuss an issue further, and it may prolong our meeting somewhat, but I have the utmost confidence that we would could work through that.
Okay, Greg, do you have any comment on that?
Say, I wouldn't like to see it get too much bigger than 10, 11. I think the 7 to 9 range is a more workable number. So just a little caution about getting too big.
Understood, Greg, and that's why I did reach out a while back and then exchanged with Sonia an email about just that,
right,
that issue of geez, we have a potential for 10. We are a good working group, and I think that the addition of, well, Darcy is who is going to be interviewed tonight, has attended our meetings as a public, just a member of the public to attend, and so.
All right, we should take this under advisement, and the board will consider it in terms of expanding the committee to 10. We're going to be reviewing, as part of our agenda next year, all the mandates for all the committees, and including size, et cetera. So let's move on with the interviews that we have, and we'll take that request. And I hear what you're saying, Al, that you feel like you guys can work it out among yourselves. It may also be possible that it becomes 9, and that a person who is not appointed to the committee could participate through volunteer effort with the committee itself. But we'll take that under advisement and move from there.
That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Al. Thanks for your help with those comments. Are there any other questions for David that board members have? Okay, so David, you're in the queue for one of 2 or 3 positions, and we will take that up at our next meeting with final recommendations.
Great.
So
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your interest, and I'm going to ask if Darcy could. Well, wait a minute. Okay.
Jeff?
Elizabeth Morris.
That's
Yes, ma'am.
me. That's me.
That's you.
Yep, I go by my middle
AKA
name.
Darcy. AKA
Oh,
Darcy.
there we go.
What can I say? Confused.
Because I'm looking at the email and I see that Darcy is in the email. So
Causes a lot of confusion. You can thank my parents, but yes, I go by my middle name, but my first name is the same as my mom's, and so i.e. Elizabeth.
Okay.
So I grew up in Manchester, Marblehead, then Manchester. I became an avid runner in 5th grade, and would run Beverly Farms and Manchester every day, lots, and ran for college, moved to California. When I came back, I lived in Boston and Needham, and I moved back to Manchester a year and a half ago. And I became a really big cyclist probably 5 or 6 years ago. So I have the perspective of cycling, running, walking. I have dogs that we walk. I cycle probably 20 to 40 miles during the week, longer on the weekends. If I'm not cycling, I'm running 5 to 10 miles in the morning. So I see a lot. I also will go on my mountain bike and do something more chill with my boyfriend because he's not as big a cyclist. Was here during COVID and saw how there was a lot more people out and how our resources were more taxed then in terms of trying to spread out and more capacity out there. I've had near misses with cars, running and cycling, even when I'm trying to be very careful. So had a lot of perspective since 5th grade. I'm in my late 30s. So been in other towns, seen how other towns have done it, been in the city and right on the Charles, been in California. So it's had a lot of different views that I can bring into here and grew up here, and it's home.
So Darcy, could you focus on, in terms of the Bike and Ped Committee, what you see as one of the pressing issues that you'd like to see addressed?
I think one of the things that I've seen here is, well, it's actually two things. In the winter, it's not necessarily as safe on the sidewalks or the roads for or cycling. Slippering, falling is easy. I don't really bike in the winter, so its perspective is more for running and walking, which I do a lot of in the winter. And I don't think sidewalks are clear or they're icy. And I know that's been something I see walkers fall. I've had near misses, and that could be something better for those that want to get fresh air, to be better for kids going to school. But to me, that's an issue because I'll be on the road where it might be safer, and then I might get hit, and there's not a lot of safe. That's not much better than falling. I would argue it's worse. So that's one issue. I would say sidewalks, cars don't stop a lot of times. And as a runner or a walker or a cyclist, that's a little unnerving. You can't trust cars. And so some way to have more signage or something so that cars stop. But I don't see that. I live down by Boardman Avenue. They don't stop by Old Corner Inn that often. It's rare in the city, in the town. It's they don't always stop. Sometimes they do. I've seen kids almost get hit before going to school. I don't know if that's signage or just like cars don't see it, but
so your primary concerns are around safety for runners and bikers.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Other questions that other board members have?
I do not, thank you.
Mr. Brown?
I'm good. And
Ms. Harrison?
And thank you, Darcy.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Boland?
I'm good too.
Okay. Thank you, Darcy.
Thank you.
We have one other candidate, and we want to ask Jay, who's off of childcare duty and into the interview seat. Melanie's interview was earlier, and they're switching off on covering the children. So Jay, if you could introduce yourself and speak to your background that relates to being on the Bike and Ped Committee.
Sure. Thank you all for the time. Yeah, in an effort to not be redundant, you've all heard from my wife that we have been here just over a year. We have 3 kids, all under 6, and I'm the, for lack of a better word, stay-at-home parent for them. And we're in Beverly for about 7-8 years before this. And my interest in this particular committee, I'm a big mountain biker, and similar to David, I'm sort of like not a cyclist, but I use the town roads on my bike all the time. And our oldest daughter is a maniac on the bike, so we spend a lot of time on the road. And I feel that although it's a small, quaint town, there's going to be, I think, as evidenced by changes north of Boston. We're going to see that in our town as well. There's going to be more people here. There's going to be younger people here. There's going to be more bikes. There's going to be more kids. And having 3 going into the school system, I want to make sure that they have, and not selfishly, that all the kids in town have a safe way to travel on the roads and to be seen. So I feel like visibility and safety are the 2 things that I'm most concerned with. And my neighborhood happens to be part of that parade that David was talking about going down Pleasant Street. There's like an informal chaperone system with the kids going to school and a parent in tow. And I'm excited to be one of those parents in the coming years. And yeah, to be honest with you, I get nervous when I see the kids going down the street, and I want to make that feeling, I want to make that feeling kind of go away and have people that also live in town feel similarly.
Okay. Board members, any questions for Jay?
Yeah, Jay, I've got a question. And again, like with all of the other folks, thanks for raising your hand. And if both you and your wife, we're going to keep both you and your wife pretty busy, it appears.
I hope so. We're excited to be here.
With 3 kids under 6, that's already the case.
It's
nuts. I'm just curious, is there any specific project or thing that you're looking at in bicycle pedestrian end of things that you'd like to see change or be done?
Well, yes, and admittedly, without a lot of committee or any committee experience in my life, I think for me coming into this, if I were to be offered the position, I would want to come in with an initially like a listen and learn approach. I feel like there's a lot to take in. It seems like all of you guys have a lot of experience, and that's something I would want to absorb and transform as I learn about the town and how to do things properly and what's possible. But having lived in a lot of major cities in my life, I think that, and again, to the visibility point, keeping the roads a place where people know there are going to be bikes on the road and people walking and people crossing the street is a big deal for me. We cross the street on Pine on a regular basis, and as well at Masco, that intersection, or not an intersection, but the Masco Park and Beach Street over to Captain Dusty's and downtown. And I think that there's always ways to make those crosswalks more visible. What I saw in Beverly over the years there was not settling. Yeah, it was unsettling. There's constantly cars flying by. And, I don't think we'll ever be a town that big, obviously, but I want to make sure that things don't trend in that direction where cars become comfortable just blazing through the intersection. So making those more visible, I think, would be a place that I feel passionate about.
Good. Any other board members' questions? Eli?
I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jay.
Jay, thank you so much for throwing your bike into the ring.
Thank you, guys.
And we'll have it back with all the repairs done on the 19th. So we will be voting on the 19th for the Bike and Ped Committee, along with the other committees that we've interviewed for tonight. So thank you for your interest.
Thank you, Jay.
Okay. That is the end of our interviews, which is about 40 minutes over. Interviews need to take time, and so we get a clear understanding of the decisions we're making. But we're going to move on to the next agenda item, which is the Winthrop Field Committee update. And
okay.
We have a representative from the Winthrop Field Committee to present this.
Yep, Mr. Chairman.
Like Mike Chapman's.
Yep.
Stepping up.
Is Mike Chapman of 131 Bridge Street. I'm the chair of the Winthrop Field Committee. So just want to give a quick update. We try to do it every year because the Winthrop Field Committee is an advisory committee to the Board of Selectmen. For those of you who don't know, the Winthrop Field is a 15-acre area in West Manchester, bounded by Bridge Street and Jersey Lane, and we're open for recreation 365 days of the year. Our committee members are Sue Thorne, Gar Morse, Jim Maroney, Matt Brzezinski, Michael Carvalho, Tony Leggett, myself, and our advisor is Ben Rossi. We are lucky enough that the committee is self-funded through donations from the Clara Winthrop Charitable Trust and the Friends of Winthrop Field. So we don't use any tax dollars or town dollars for the maintenance of the field. A quick update on the finances for the year. Our current account balance is $68,591, and that was verified with the town accountant on January 19th. Balance includes donations of $1,500 for this year. We probably have another $200 coming in here soon, so probably $1,700 for the year. And we're very lucky again to have a $10,000 donation each year from the Clara Winthrop Charitable Trust. And that covers the mowing and other things we may need to do during the year. This past year, we spent $4,100 for mowing and baling of the field. The second rotary cut wasn't done because the first cut was done sufficiently late. And that work was done by Bill Perkins of Essex per contract. We spent $2,700 for 2 drain clearing sessions by Dash Drains. There are 15 manholes in Winthrop Field that serve to drain the field. As most of you know, when we get 2+ inches of rain in a short order, there's some flooding in the middle of the field, and that should clear within 24 hours. So we're trying to maintain that drain system so that continues. We spent a little over $1,000 for repair of one of the failed drain lines in the field this year. So total, a little less than $8,000 was spent, with $11,500 in donations coming in. The big expense for the year is our contract for the mowing and baling. And this year it's been awarded to Ken Lane of Seaview Farms in Rockport. While Mr. Perkins has done an admirable job for many years, and we wanted to thank him for his service, Mr. Lane's bid was just a little bit less expensive, but the key thing was that his approach didn't have the possible risk of the inability to dispose of the hay once it's been baled. Because we follow the Audubon restrictions or guidelines, we mow and bale the field late so that any birds that have 2 sets of eggs are able to do that without being disturbed. And that means that the hay is not feed grade, it's usually used for erosion control. And Mr. Perkins had trouble getting rid of the hay last year, and has had in the past with Mr. Lane. He runs a farm, so he's able to get rid of the hay himself. And as a thank you for Mr. Perkins, we're working with the Friends of Trees to plant a tree near the Bridge Street wall, again as a thanks for Mr. Perkins. So we're working with them on that. Just a couple of items to note. As I said, with Mr. Lane taking on mowing of the field, committee doesn't face that immediate need for figuring out what the alternate plans are to mow and bale the hay, but that's still top of mind. So we'll continue to keep that on our agenda. We did over the last few years have slow draining and flooding of the western end of the field. That was addressed mostly by the fixing of the leaking water line at 135 Bridge Street. This last year, we did manage to locate 2 of the failed manholes that were abandoned in the 1970s as safety risks. They both collapsed, leaving big holes. So we are working to see how we can rehabilitate those 2, and we had Chuck and Nate from the DPW out to review our approaches to do so. And we'll continue to do more locations for more of the drain lines and manholes to make sure that we have them all located. So just to wrap up our projects for the coming year: brush clearing along the north border of the field and along Bridge Street. Committee members get together and do that. Mowing and baling in July or August by Ken Lane for 4,300. Second rotary cut if it's needed by Ken Lane for 300. Probably drain clearing and locating by dash drains, maybe 3,600. Manhole rehabilitation, we really won't know until we get into it, but it's probably going to run about $5,000 per, and we have the money in the budget for that. And then we'd still have on our list to take a look at the brook that runs next to Dan Senecal's property out to Tux Point. It does need to be cleared so that we get good drainage there, but that's something that we've got on the list and we need to take care of, but haven't made any progress on that. So in very hopefully quickly enough to get you almost back on track for your agenda. That's where we are at Winthrop Field for this year. So I'd like to ask if there are any questions or comments.
Thank you, Mike, for a very rapid and succinct report. I appreciate that. It sounds like you guys have been very busy making adjustments to the way that you've been doing business and beginning to address concerns that are more substantial concerns in terms of the infrastructure of the field. You drive by there, you just think, oh, there's a really beautiful field, but there's a lot of work that goes into maintaining that. So we appreciate all the work that the Winthrop Field Committee does.
Well, thank you. It certainly is a labor of love for all of us.
Yes. Any questions from the Board of Selectmen for Mike?
Technical point, are we approving any donations tonight, or are we still waiting for those to come in?
No, we're still waiting for those coming, Mr. Bowling. The $1,500 came in December, so that's already been approved. The other $200 will be in soon, and that's a question. Should they go direct to the town accountant, or should they come into the selectmen?
Greg is muted.
Smaller donations can come straight to the town account. Any single large donations over 1,000 need to be approved by the board.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, glad you got the mowing worked out.
Yeah, it's great. So good luck with the drainage issues, and thank you for all the hard work that you do on the field. We appreciate it. The town appreciates it.
Thanks, everyone. Stop by whenever you can.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, that's a little bit of catch up. Next on the agenda is the Harbor Master update and proposal for a dredging fee and NOAA boat mooring, not mooring, but docking. So, Ian, you're on.
Can you hear me? I think you can. I see the yellow square around my face. Okay, great. Excuse me. So the HAC recommends these two items. The first is going back to late last year, earlier this year, when a recommendation was brought forth to the selectmen for a fee to help with the dredging costs. And we went back to the drawing board, the selectmen, for the selectmen. The HAC and the Harbor Department are recommending a $2.50 per foot fee to be put in a separate account line item in the harbor usage fee solely for dredging costs. And the other item, we were contacted by NOAA about the possibility of keeping one of their two East Coast enforcement vessels at our Reed Park docking facility, for which they're willing to pay $3,500 a year. That was their proposed number. The boat would be in operation essentially the same months as our own boats and would be rafted at the dock with our 25-foot safe boat. They have a 27-foot boat and are looking at the possibility of trading up and having a 42-foot boat at our dock.
Brian, what is NOAA?
NOAA, National Oceanographic Atmospheric Administration. They do the federal level enforcement on national marine fisheries. They're the ones who go out and make sure that all the fishermen are following the federal laws, similar to the Massachusetts Environmental Police who do that at the state level. And these are the federal folks. One of the benefits we would have if we had this boat here, it will help anytime we want to write a grant for anything to the federal government. Having a federal vessel in this harbor will help our argument for grant funding.
Jeff, if I may ask Brian a question?
You may.
Thank you. Hi, Brian.
Hi, Becky.
Does the vessel need electric hookup?
So it does not. It wouldn't, like our own boats, we would benefit from having electric at the dock. The $50,000 that the town just awarded to the Harbor Department for a floating office, some of that funding was going to go toward putting some electricity down there to support the floating office. So there will be some electricity down there, which if they were going to utilize that, certainly like any boater coming to the dock would probably be an increased fee for them.
And so then we'll provide pump out as well and all that
Yeah,
good stuff.
I don't think that they'll need, you mean for their boat?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they won't need pump out. They'll be doing all their pumping out offshore.
Okay.
Far out. Jeffrey's Bank.
Fish
out.
food.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Brian? A couple of questions about the NOAA boat. Which particular fisheries does it enforce on? And is that boat going to be ever needing to leave in a hurry, or is it going to be leaving at strange times of the day?
That's a good question. In a hurry, that seems very unlikely. They're going far offshore. I wouldn't be surprised if there were times when it was going out to enforce at night. So it could be that boat would be getting underway at any hour. I would say that would be fair to say.
And you said that they're looking to move up to a 42-foot boat. In what time frame do you think that might happen?
So it doesn't appear that would happen this year. It would be over the winter next year. For next summer. Their boat right now is currently in Situate. The reason they want the boat here is it's a far drive for the operators to get to the boat, and then it's a longer boat trip out of Situate to the Banks or Jeffrey's.
And I gather Gloucester is not exactly competing for this boat.
Yes, so that's where their office is, and no matter what, they won't be keeping the boat in Gloucester.
Yeah,
we did our HAC member, who is a commercial fisherman, did speak with our fishermen and lobstermen, and not one of them has an issue with the boat being in here. And that was a major concern that we wanted to get an answer to before it came to you folks.
Any other questions from the board?
Two. First, how much money will the surcharge on moorings bring in per year?
Ann, I have to apologize. I should have had that ready
That's
to
okay.
present to you. I have it, but I don't have it ready to present. It was very, very close to the number, a little bit, maybe a couple $1,000s more than the number that the flat rate, I think it was $100 per boat that we'd set. It's very, very close to that, and actually a little higher. I want, off the top of my head, it's north of 40,000.
Okay, the other question, you said that NOAA offered 3,500. That seems, I know a lot of people who would leap at the chance to tie up in Manchester Harbor for a season for $3,500. Is that negotiable? Are we going to let them pay the same for a 27-foot boat and next year for a,
42.
42?
Right, so this is entirely at the pleasure of the selectmen. If that number is too low, I will be glad to let them know. The town is in the driver's seat completely. We don't have to have the boat here. We don't have to take the money. If there's another number that folks have in mind, I'm more than happy to present that to Officer Testaverde.
Off the top of, not off the top of your head. I'm sure you can find out what Manchester Marine or the Crockers charges per foot for a season. And just mention to them that they're asking for a large donation.
I'd be happy to do that.
Or consider what you could use, what you could get if you had that space available for rentals.
Right. Yeah, actually, so the space that it would share with the town boat. So we actually don't generate any revenue off that spot right now.
But I think from what you described, that they might have to leave in the middle of the night. It's going to be awkward to share. Because either they're on the outside, in which case it's easy for them, but our safety boat can't get out, or they're on the inside and they can't get out.
It's actually, I would say that won't be a challenge. The jockeying of the boats, we do that pretty regularly with the two boats that are rafted there on the end now. So I don't see that as a huge issue, but I would really, if there's a number that the selectmen would feel comfortable, I'm happy to share that with the with Officer Testaverde of the Marine Fisheries. I don't, the jockeying of the boats, the keeping of the boats in that space, and I've talked it over with the staff and with the police department. We just don't see that as a challenge. Obviously, having a 27 or 42 foot boat at the dock, that is another public safety boat. The fact that it's an enforcement fisheries boat, that could be an issue for some folks, but from an operational standpoint, that's not the challenge.
Thank you.
Sure.
I had one other question. Let's suppose that we do this for a couple of years and for any number of reasons it doesn't work out, or we don't feel like it's working out. What's the divorce look like?
So the town can turn down, refuse the NOAA folks to come back next year or the year after. I think if we accept the money for the year, they would come and we would see. If it didn't work, we can say no with no penalty and no timetable for them to get out.
Becky?
Yes, I do have another question. Thank you, Jeff. Bion, what kind of, is it a diesel? What kind of engines? And if we're talking about having to go out in the middle of the night, would that be problematic for the people who live near Reed Park?
So the 27 footer is the same as our 25. It has outboards on it. The 42 has jet drive, like a Hinckley. So that would have a diesel engine.
Do you think that that could be problematic noise?
So down there closer to Beach Street, certainly more of an impact than our transient boaters that will run a diesel generator at night. We do have boaters that have diesel generators and run them. But it is down on the far end, would be down on the far end closest to Beach Street. So I couldn't say that there would be no impact if the boat were to leave at 2 in the morning.
Okay.
Who's responsible for security of this boat line?
They are. It's their boat. They're responsible for security. They were happy that the town has the Massachusetts coastal cameras right there at Beach Street. So certainly any security issues can be forensically followed up on using the security system, just as the cameras were used when the gentleman was stabbed and thrown out of the car. Those same cameras were able to detect that. So there is security that the town has there, but it is ultimately the responsibility of NOAA. And I would assume that they would provide a certificate of insurance to indemnify if there were any injury or property damage because of the boat.
That was my second question, which was insurance. And my third question was was asked by Ann, which is if I wanted to pull my 27-foot boat up and park it there for a year, what would you charge me?
So legally, because of the grant, you could only stay for 10 days, so you couldn't stay for a year. Unless we wanted, so where these boats, all of our public safety boats tie up, are actually up on the docks that the town had before the expansion of the facility. And the grant has nothing to do with those 3 floats. It's just, it's outside of the scope of the federal grant that paid for those docks. 27-foot boat, if it were paying the nightly rate of $3 a foot, be $81 a night, plus 48 for the 6 intervening hours when it was there. So $130 a day for 10 days, $1,300 for 10 days.
I've got a question for.
Go ahead, Jane.
Yeah. So I don't know what the prevailing rates are for slips, but this is this number, and I'm equating it to a slip, even though it's a public dock. I mean, you're pulling up a boat at a dock, but I assume it's much less than what a slip would be, correct?
Yes, it is, and so our fee structure wasn't designed to compete with the local marinas.
Understood. They want this space like yesterday?
They would bring the boat up probably within 2 weeks.
Okay. The only question I have, the difference between 27 feet and 42 feet is a lot. And we've got a flat number here regardless of which boat they bring in?
Well, that's up to the town.
Well, I think we should charge $5,000 if they're going to bring a 42-foot boat in here. And 35, I believe 3,500, that's what you put out on the table and see how that goes for a year. And because this is kind of year to year, is this correct?
That's correct. There's
Okay.
no contract. They don't have a 5-year, they don't have a 2-year contract. This is just an annual agreement.
Okay. Well, a 42-foot boat is a big boat. And I think that we should, you know, whichever one they want to bring in, fine, but I think we should have a couple of different numbers.
Okay, I just multiplied 27 times 8 times 90, which is 3 months. And it comes to $19,000. Now that's probably more than we want to ask him for, but why don't we consider asking that they start at 5,000? This is me, I'm one member of the board. Don't nod.
I don't think that's an unfair ask at all.
Okay.
If you'd
No.
like me to ask for the 5 for the 27-footer, I'm happy to do it.
And 7,500 for the larger boat.
No, let's not even talk about the larger boat, John, until the
Okay.
larger boat appears. This contract is for the 27-foot boat.
Yeah, these guys are running up north, up towards like George's Bank and pretty far out, right?
Yep, that's
So
correct.
they're gonna save all that money more in gas money, having to not drive from Situate. They're not gonna blink at the increased price.
I agree.
The question is, how do we set a fair price for us as well as them without doing a back of the envelope calculation? And what's the cost to the town of having this dock space taken this way?
So that is up on the free tie-up end of the dock. So we don't charge for that end of the dock to begin with. That's the spot where folks get to come in and tie up. So I would envision actually that we would have to take one float further and put that into the half-hour tie-up to continue to have the same level of availability of the short-term Captain Dusty's, Crosby's tie-up.
Okay, my concern is things like major storms coming in and having particularly the 42-foot boat rip the dock apart as a result of the storm. Are they only going to be here during the summer, or are they planning on year-round?
No, it's definitely not year-round. Their schedule is very similar to ours. They couldn't be at that dock year-round because we don't keep that dock in year-round. And I was very clear with that with Officer Testaverde when he came in, Lieutenant Testaverde, I'm sorry. I said the facility isn't in year-round. Typically it gets in mid to late March and comes out around Thanksgiving. And that's well within his window of operation with the boat.
So roughly 7.5, 8 months a year.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so do we need to vote on the recommendations of the $2.50. I had a question about that, the $2.50 for the dredging fee. I had a question about that. And that is an accounting issue, Greg. This is going to require having a fund that builds over several years towards dredging. So is that an issue?
No, that's fine. We have several funds like that. So this can be treated similarly.
Okay. So we have two recommendations. I want to take them separately. Can I have a motion regarding the surcharge for dredging fees for mooring holders?
So moved.
So moved as written in the document.
Moved
that
as
says-
written.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't hear a second.
Second.
Okay, so that's Becky and Ann.
Sure.
And any further discussion? Okay, let's get your vote in. Mr. Bowling,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner votes yes. In regard to the boat tie-up, we're suggesting a fee of $5,000. And that's only when the dock is available.
For a 27-foot vessel.
For a 27-foot vessel, and to be renegotiated if it goes to a 42-foot vessel.
And
Could we
that's-
say
and
that it's renegotiated each year?
And renegotiated each year.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, this is not a yearly fee right now. This is as of July 5th.
We're aware of that, but
And they are
looking,
too.
they're looking for this place.
Yep.
And these would be the conditions, and they'd get a much better deal next year if they stay in and we stay in.
Mhm.
So more time. So so this is approval of an NOAA boat tie-up at the town dock at Reed Park for the seasonal fee of $5,000. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
May I make a friendly amendment?
We've got a motion on the floor. I need a second on that motion, and then we can do an amendment.
Second.
Okay, so that's Ms. Harrison on the motion and Mr. Round on the second. And Becky, you have an amendment that you want to make to this?
I just want it noted that we are not providing any services. This is simply for dock space.
Yes. And that we need this in a written contract.
Mhm. Do you accept the friendly amendment?
Ms. Harrison, do you accept the friendly
Yes.
amendment to your proposal?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. So without
you.
any services. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, Mr. Bowling,
Yes.
Ms. Jakes,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner votes yes. So Brian, if there's any consideration of negotiation, further negotiation on that, I understand you'll bring it back to us.
I will. I think I'll just make it perfectly clear that that's the town's price. And if they'd like to keep it here, that's what it has to be. It seems not an unfair
Okay,
fee.
and Greg, will there be any problem with drawing up a simple contract for this?
No, we can put together something pretty straightforward.
Okay. And quickly?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you, Brian.
Thank you, everybody. Sorry it took too long, but I appreciate it very much.
All right, you may
Good
want
night,
to,
Bion.
you may want to stick around. No, Brian, you may
Oh.
want to stick around for the next one.
Oh, really? Okay. I'll delay my bowl of ice cream.
Oh, you better. And we're in a series of delays here. We're almost an hour behind where we need to be. So I'm not sure whether we don't want to push this off because it was a request of the Downtown Improvement Committee for public restrooms to be installed. This was a request, a top request that emerged from discussions with local business owners to have public restrooms in the village core. So Greg, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So we've been trying to gather information and our options 4 different temporary toilet facilities. We'd like to do something better than your standard porta potty with the basic pit underneath. Provide something a little nicer than that. The problem is most of the nicer units have very limited holding capacity and would either need to be pumped out very frequently or not be open a lot of times because they haven't been pumped out. So that doesn't seem very attractive or effective. We have contacted a couple of companies. They do have trailers with much larger holding capacity. And we've been waiting to hear some more of the details that they have. Those larger units do require electricity. So that is a little more complicated, but not insurmountable, but it will take a little bit of time. Couple weeks if we can get electrician lined up and doing the necessary work. Obviously, this sort of harkens back to efforts that Brian and others were involved with, looking at a harbor master office and public restrooms tucked into the side of Reed. That effort did not bear fruit, and there was some opposition to doing something in Reed. There is the alternative, looking at Masco as a place for a permanent facility. But nonetheless, we don't have that. That's not going to happen overnight. So I think it does make sense to try to do something on a temporary basis for this season and possibly next. I'd like to continue to try to get more information on the larger units that have the holding capacity and that are nicer than your typical porta potties. But we could do this in 2 stages. Do the more typical porta potties for now, as we work on bringing in a nicer facility, but that will require some additional utility work. So I should just final comment. This would be eligible to use some of our ARPA fund, the American Recovery Act monies, as it supports business recovery in our business district. And as you indicated, it's one of the requests that the business community has made that they feel would be helpful to them as they regain their footage here.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board?
I have a question for Greg, Jeff.
Go ahead, John.
What's the story with the porta potties that are in Masco? Are they operational or only operational during events, or what's the situation?
No, right, they are there. They're sort of further back into the park, not as well known, perhaps.
Well hidden.
Not well known to the shoppers in town.
Right, it's another 100 yards, but those are available for folks.
They are, yes,
and have been for a while, I think.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And Greg, do you have any idea what kind of business they get? I mean, is it something that needs to be maintained on a regular basis?
Yeah, they get pumped out, I think, a couple times a week. Minimum of 1, I believe. Cheryl ups it to 2 times a week in July and August here.
Okay.
I should say some alternatives. We do have the restrooms here at Town Hall. It would require some additional, maintenance, cleaning, and monitoring to make sure that they are, usable, presentable, and not getting dirty, so that people feel comfortable continuing to use them. So it would require some additional staffing, particularly during the weekends. Obviously, that's a busier time.
I think that's a very limited resource, because we don't want to keep Town Hall open in the evening for people to use the facilities.
Or weekends.
And weekends, that starts to become very expensive. So I think that's a very limited resource.
So the other alternative idea, and I haven't gotten much feedback yet, but could instead of spending money on a facility at Reed or Masco, could we talk to some of the business owners and offer them remuneration for having people being able to use their facilities on a more general basis rather than just limited to their own customers. Like I say, I haven't heard back from folks on that concept, but that was the other idea that we were kicking around.
I think, with your permission, Jeff.
Yes, Mr. Balling is recognized by the chair. I'm kind of working my way in here.
Yeah. So I think having facilities more centrally located is a good thing. I think that the area next to the train tracks where the arborvitae are, some of which have been beat down pretty bad, would be a perfectly reasonable place for these if they were not low-end porta potties. I'm pretty sensitive to the idea that people won't want something unpleasant there. And I think it would be a big support to our businesses. So I would be interested in high quality units in that area. And I'll stop there for now.
What about the consideration of temporarily using porta potties in that area until a more durable installation could be done?
I don't know. A more durable, something you mean powered, so there'd be better units that would be less need less maintenance. Is that what you mean?
I mean the units that Greg was talking about that did require power.
Those being the more
I don't know whether they need less maintenance than porta potties do. But
the ones needing power being the more durable ones. Is that what you?
That's what my reference to durable is.
Yeah. If the time frames are relatively short, yeah, I guess we could tolerate that. I'm concerned about the residential feedback out of the gate. If we put something there that's sub-ideal.
Okay.
Would it be possible to add more units at Masco with some signage as a short-term, get it done right now because it's high summer, and at the same time put in the power to put in the trailer unit at Reed Park by the tracks?
So, and you're suggesting that any short-term units that are put on with the other porta potties over at Masco?
Nobody knows about them, so if we had a sign, it would be an improvement. And it's not right in somebody else's backyard.
I'm just trying to understand, are we adding to those units or?
I think we should add to those units. If they're getting pumped twice a week already, and we're going to put up signage and try and get people to use them.
Okay. Okay, I can't imagine what the signage would be.
Do you know what a bathroom sign looks like?
Yeah, I do. All right, any other board comments? I want to keep moving along here because we have another significant agenda item, and then we have some significant items under the consent agenda and correspondence.
Jeff, I'll just note that you've got a couple hands raised over there.
Yes, I do. I'm asking about the board first.
Jeff, just a a question, or I guess, Greg, what is the timeline to put in electrical or whatever would be needed for these more sophisticated units? Is this like a couple of weeks or 3 months, or the summer's gone?
I would hope, a couple, 3 weeks. I don't know if Chuck can address that issue or not, but that's my guess, but Chuck probably has better thoughts on that than I do.
Okay. I mean, if it's a couple of weeks, I'm listening to Eli's concern about the neighborhood there next to the train tracks. It's largely commercial, but commercial folks have opinions. But if it's a couple of weeks, probably get away from that, knowing that it's only going to be that. But
What's the durability of these units, Greg, going into the cold weather? I know porta potties are a little bit dicey in the cold weather.
So the fancier units do have heat and air conditioning.
Okay. All right. All right. So I have two hands raised, and I didn't see who went up first. So I'm going to take Gary Gilbert first, and then Chuck. Unless, wait a minute, Gary, let me take Chuck first, because he may have some expertise in this area that may be helpful to this whole conversation.
Thanks. So just a couple of other things about this whole thing. So just to be perfectly clear, we've talked to a couple of different vendors. Sonia's done a lot of homework. I've talked to them. The conversation that I've had with the first vendor, at least, was that they need to be within 30 feet to service them. So that doesn't get you very far into Reed Park, like especially if you're trying to hide them in the corner by the Abrevieties or further down. And then if that's your preferred location and we have to end up running water and electric to them, kind of answering Greg's question, but if you only wanted to connect electricity to them, there is electricity in the park, but it's not at that location. So of course it has to be run over. And so without burying it, like we bury most other utilities, and this goes for the water as well, it's going across overland, maybe overhead, but likely over the ground in the park. And so there's a couple drawbacks here that it's not just quite as simple as getting the nice units and putting them where we want and having everything work. There is still some details that need to be worked out. If we go with nicer units that need electricity, that have air conditioning and heating, now that I'm sure that's a higher circuit capability that's needed than just your standard lights. So you're getting into a fair amount of engineering that I have to kind of turn around and laugh a little bit, because what you're asking for is a permanent solution, which is the harbor master office or its equivalent in this location, and trying to do it in 3 weeks. And so if it were something that could be done in 3 weeks, I can assure you it would be done by now. I'm not convinced that it is, but I'm hoping that we can keep working with these vendors and find something. But it's hard for me to sit here today and promise, we're looking at 3 weeks being August. It's hard for me to promise that. So I guess that's where I'll leave it for now, but I just wanted that to be part of the conversation. Of course, if we are within the 30 feet of the sidewalk, there's only really one location, which is at the Abrevietie, but that's also to get something delivered to that location means that you need the parking spot that's there to be unoccupied, and you need to have that person deliver the trailer over the curb line and also probably drive over the train tracks to back it in. So it's one of those things that I think, it's one thing talking to a vendor. It's another thing when they see the site in person and see all the things that we want them to work around to get it right. So I just want to caution everybody getting too far out here without getting the installation in. So I'll leave it at that and leave it to Gary and other.
Okay. Thank you, Chuck. That helps with a little reality check, a big reality check. I'm going to ask that the people who are lined up here are the only 3 people that I will recognize, and I'm going to limit you to like 2 minutes. I'm sorry to say, because We've got a lot of business to still take care of. So Gary, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to your new position. And thanks to Eli and the board for all you guys did this last year. There's an idea that sort of emerged out of the last merchants meeting. And I spoke to Ken Reel about it, and I spoke to Greg about it. He mentioned it earlier. It would be that the town might, first off, nobody likes porta potties in general. And they're also isolated, they're hidden, they're not dispersed. If you're near town hall and need to use a porta potty and it's over at Reed Park, you won't even know it's there and you won't have the time to run there perhaps. It might be better, and it very much depends on business buy-in, but to have a cooperative program where the town is involved and the businesses are involved, where a piece of signage is developed that's appropriate for downtown, that makes it clear there's a public restroom in certain businesses. I think you need at least 4 or 6 minimum that would buy into this for it to really work. And I've identified maybe about 8 possibilities. But the town could offer maybe a 2-tiered compensation. If you're a restaurant, well, let's see, if you're a regular business, like a clothing business, the town might offer you more compensation based on your water bill, just to pick something. Maybe you give them, I don't know, 40% of their water bill because on an annual basis, they're offering their bathroom, they're cleaning it, they're providing toilet paper, they're allowing it to be used for the public, but they're also getting people to come in their doors. And you would offer a lower compensation for restaurants because they have a higher water bill. But that's just one idea. It would relieve pressure on existing businesses. They're already taking the burden of allowing, tourists to come in and use their bathroom. It provides for a dispersed public bathroom system. As I said before, it gets people in the doors of some of these merchants, which I think is a plus and may help the businesses. I love the idea of government and business working together in general, if it can be worked out. And it would, let's see, it would delay or offset the need to build an actual structure. The structure would be singular, it would be remote, and it would not be as dispersed as a program like this. So it's an idea. Obviously, it needs wings. It needs business buy-in. There you have it.
Well done, Gary. Okay. I'm not going to ask for board comments on what Gary just said, because we do need to bring this discussion to a close fairly quickly. So I'm going to move on to Sandy. Thank you, Gary, for your comments.
Hi, thanks. Sandy Rogers, 82 Old Essex Road. I have a question regarding who are we trying to provide the bathrooms for? And we want to bring them toward town so that they go to the businesses. So having it out in Moscow or Reed Park, to me, it sounds like you're just getting the people that are going to the beach and back. You want to bring them into town and have something more centrally located. I like the idea of working with the businesses and working with landlords. So the building that Mari's in and Stony Brook, it's like a hallway, there are bathrooms there. It's something that's very centrally located. It's not something that's going to disturb their businesses that much because they have their own doors that enter into their business space, and it could bring more business in that general region. So to me, if the idea is to really help the businesses in town, that having something like that makes more sense. And then, as you've mentioned, offsetting costs, etc., and maybe having at least 2 or 3 of those types of locations, so you're not overwhelming one location. Thank you.
Thank you,
Because
Sandy.
I just don't understand why and who you're trying to give these resources to.
Okay. The proposal was made during a downtown improvement committee meeting where they were talking to business owners in the downtown, and that their number one proposal was to get some kind of public bathrooms available to people who are coming into town. That's what we know about where this came from, and that the audience would be for people coming into town who would be going to the restaurants or shopping and the like. And your comments about if it's far enough out, people aren't going to find it or they're not going to make it. And we need to take that into consideration. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. I'm going to move on to Mary and Gar. I said that I was only going to take 3 people. Mary's the third. I'm sorry that I'm not going to be able to take you tonight. I think this conversation is going to go on, so there'll be other opportunities for input. But go ahead, Mary.
Oh, thanks, Jeff.
Right.
I was just going to make.
I talked to her a while back.
Hmm?
I was watching the golf match at Moonlight Basin.
Should I continue?
Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to make the suggestion to consider behind town hall. I believe the town is putting a path from the parking lot to the businesses to encourage more use, clearer path and parking for businesses. So that might be an ideal spot for the restrooms back there.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion. Okay, I'm going to ask that we do 2 things tonight. One is that Chuck had mentioned talking further with the vendor, and actually that they've been talking to, and having the vendor come and visit the site. I think we need
Jeff?
that. Yes.
I'm sorry, may I just ask, we might need to get Concom involved based on proximity to the water. I mean, I don't know if the other porta potties are, but is this something Greg might know the answer to?
So it's self-contained and above ground and not in actual resource areas. I mean, we'll confer with Chris, but I think we can be in good order there.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Thank you for the suggestion. I started to say that I'd like to find out whether Chuck can bring the vendor in to actually take a look at the site so we could get a proposal from that vendor. And this would be, I don't know how we would do it in the back of town hall. Mary's suggestion is very appealing. We could discuss that further, but to get a proposal at least for the Reed Park area or Masco, and that Greg, you were looking into interim costs and what we would need to do to put in temporary facilities, and the location of which could be determined, but what it would cost. You said Sonia had been in touch with several vendors. So if we can get some really clear numbers that we're working with here, and bring this back to the meeting on the 19th. Okay, I know that the businesses may not be happy with that, but we do need to vet this a little bit more, and not just jump into. I don't want to use the phrase, but create a storm around it. Okay. So is that reasonable, Chuck, Greg? Okay. And
Could we at least try and get some signage so that people could figure out that there were bathrooms at Masco who haven't lived here for all their lives?
Mhm.
Where would we start to put that signage in? I mean, you could put it at the end of the Masco driveway, obviously. Restrooms this way.
And you could put it at the corner by Crosby's, restrooms that way. 400 yards.
Oh. Okay, we can certainly try and see if we can put those in so that we've located them.
I think it makes sense.
Okay.
Business opportunity for an app.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. I don't want this to spin out of control. Thank you, Chuck, for that suggestion, but a whole lot. Okay, I'm going to move along because we have a discussion about the compost facility, and then we have our consent agenda and correspondence and the town administrator's report, and we're already past 9 o'clock. And I know that Alan Wilson has been checking in and has been waiting in the wings about getting some dates out for a special town meeting in the fall. So let's take up the compost facility next. And Greg, if you want to start us off.
Sure, thank you, Jeff. So we've been working, as you know, for quite a number of years on this compost project. We have gone back out for a second round of bidding. We do have a complete bid back that is responsive to our proposal. It is from Black Earth. They had an initial cost proposal that we asked them to reconsider, as it was fairly heavily front-loaded from our perspective, requiring us to come up with significantly more money in the beginning years, and then that tapering off and being much less expensive later on. We asked them to work on a couple of different scenarios where it would be much more level funded for us going throughout the life of the contract and the lease. They've come back with a number of different options, and those are much more attractive from the town's financial perspective. The most attractive ones are their option 3 and 4. Option 3 requires us to enter into the initial 20-year lease that would be renewable, automatically renewable, assuming that operations are going fine and we don't have any performance complaints. And for that 30-plus year agreement, in 2 chunks, the first 20 years and then an additional 10-year for the renewal, they could offer a pretty competitive price to us that would be below what we're currently paying for their services. And that would serve us well. The 4th option would require us going back to the voters, because it would require basically not a purchase of the land, but a 99-year lease of the land for their operations. They're looking for stability, and the longer that they can know that they have a site, the better pricing that they are willing to give us. So under that scenario, it would be actually a no-cost situation for the town in exchange for giving them use of the old landfill site for up to that 99-year period. As I say, that would require going back to voters, so we're not able to enter into such an agreement right now. So it might make sense to do sort of a two-pronged approach, which is to work up a contract for the 20 plus 10, 20 years, and then a 10-year renewable to lock in that lower price, starting out at $50,000 a year. And then in a couple to 5 years, depending on how things are going and how quickly we want to move, once they're operational, people have a chance to see that operations that may lay the groundwork to have the voters consider the 4th option, that 99-year lease. So our recommendations to you at this point is to proceed with the 20 plus 10 option, that the 30-year combination to lock in that lower price of 50,000 a year, and then to have the option of considering the longer lease, the 99-year option.
Okay. Thank you for a succinct presentation. Andrew, do you want to make a comment here? And again, I realize you've been waiting a long time and that this has been a long time negotiating to get this to this point. We appreciate the options that you've given to the town. Is there anything that you want to briefly add to what Greg just said?
No, I just came in to listen. I wasn't invited per se.
Okay.
But I just wanted to see what you guys were talking about.
Okay.
But in general, we look forward to it. Like Greg said, we value stability and long-term. And like the site now at School Street is not how we want to operate it. And like it needs improvements, but we've been putting those off, waiting for this move to the landfill. So I'm looking forward to having a nice facility that we can provide to the town. The resident drop-off area for yard waste will be nice. The transfer station area will be smaller, but it will be workable. And yeah, I'm looking forward to serving the town.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. All right. Any board members' comments on the various options, but most particularly what Greg just was suggesting, which is to enter into option 3 and with an option in the contract to go to the final option for a very long-term lease.
I have a couple questions, if I may, Jeff.
Sure, go ahead, Becky.
Thank you. Greg, a couple of things. Do we still get compost? Or are the town's people still entitled to getting some compost?
Yeah, so the Black Earth is willing to continue that program for the residents.
And then, thank you. My other question was when it says base, year base, are there additional costs involved?
I'm sorry, additional cost for what now?
Well, it says, for example, looking at option 3, 50,000 per year base. Does that mean that's where it starts and we might end up paying additional costs?
So that's the starting point, and then there would be a cost of a CPI indexed increase to the contract.
Per year, I see that, but so it's 50 grand, just that's it. That's all we pay for a year, for the first year.
Correct. And the other aspect I should mention, they have offered that flat rate regardless of how many residents are participating. So if we can grow our participation rate, they are willing to service that without charging us more. So that's great. That's an attractive piece to their proposal.
Sure is. Okay, thank you.
I have a question for Greg, if I may, Jeff.
Go ahead, John.
So I'm assuming there are no tipping fees for that option 3 either, correct?
Correct. So that removes that whole element, and
right.
that they benefit from the volume, but we lock in a low price.
Okay. And that shift to option 4, Are you proposing that that's a window that we could exercise that at any time, or at some window of time, or starting at some point?
Well, we should talk to Black Earth about that, but
Okay.
I would think within, the first 10 years that we would
All right.
exercise that option.
Okay.
Yeah, we're flexible.
All right. Greg suggested tossed out 10. That sounded to me like that kind of made sense. We see how things are going along, and 10 years is certainly enough time to know that things are fitting together, and we could shift to 99 if it all makes sense.
Okay,
Jeff, if I may.
go ahead, Ann.
Greg, I just want to make sure that what we voted at town meeting will allow us to renew the contract.
So the vote at town meeting was a 20-year term, and then we can renew a 20-year term, an additional 20-year term. So it has to be in 20-year increments.
But we can do that without going back to town meeting. Okay.
All right. Any other questions, Ann? Eli?
No, I've been obviously following this all throughout this process, so I'm at this point leaning towards Greg's recommendation.
Okay. I will take one comment from Sandy.
Great, thank you. Again, Sandy Rogers, 82 Old Essex Road. I have a question on what is built into the contract. Can the residents see this? I know it's great that people are composting more. According to media reports, even just this past year, the companies has doubled in revenues and therefore have a lot of volume. So are there volume constraints over a certain time period? Are there truckload constraints over a certain time period? Are there certain stipulations regarding how many towns compost can go into this site? My understanding is that there's a Groton facility in this facility. I don't know if there's any other facility, and they're servicing all of Boston. They go all the way down to the Cape and all around Massachusetts. So, what are the specifics regarding the operations built into a contract like this, and what is being done to prepare for such even 20 years? That's a long term to deal with the kind of volume that composting could potentially bring in to this site.
I think the best way to answer that is that the site itself has limited capacity. So it only has a maximum ability to process a certain volume. So we would, as part of the contract, have the guarantee that town of Manchester composting needs is priority number one. So that Black Earth would be required to always have sufficient capacity at the site to handle what we produce as a town with all residents. And so the facility is built to an expected capacity of around 30 tons a week. We think that can probably grow based on operations, but it does have a ceiling, and that ceiling is probably in the 50-ton range. And so it just physically, it is capped at how much it can process.
But there's also all the operations, the amount of truck traffic, and just sort of the overall impact to the area. Are those stipulate, like, what is that being written into the contract?
So those are details of the contract that we can include. We have talked about truck traffic. Obviously, it's very close to 128. It's a very short distance from the exit there to the facility. So even with a high volume, it should be fairly minimal impact to the town.
Yeah, and another thing to consider is just, I personally, as a citizen, would want to go the route of, sort of seeing how it changes the dynamic of that area of town. I know that we're looking at leveraging some of the Western Woods and beyond for recreation and such. There's a lot of complaints in other areas like Groton and even where they're situated now regarding smell and other kinds of issues. So it's something that, to jump into something really long-term, I trust that the company will do its best to, be a good neighbor, but, it's just part of the business to think about that. So I would consider varying issues.
Right, so some of those performance standards will be part of the contract, and DEP will be setting some of those standards. I mean, the facility itself is designed to control odors. There's a biofilter system. That's one reason why this project is pretty expensive to build. So yes, those will be part of the annual monitoring to make sure that the operations are meeting those standards. And if not, then those are grounds for terminating.
Great. And I just have one other question. It sounds like the town is still paying for compost on top of giving them the land. Are they paying a lease, like a fee or something?
So the proposals are for us to have a much reduced cost in exchange for the land, but there still is a cost unless we go to the very long-term arrangement with the 99-year lease where that cost would be eliminated.
So
Okay,
we're giving
Sandy,
them,
Sandy,
yeah, I'm just
said-
trying to understand.
You
We're
said,
giving-
I have one more question, and that was your question. So
Okay.
I really do need to move along. And
Can we
will be
see all
discussing.
the, so I guess, is this information available to see online?
It's not until we choose a contract option that the actual contract would be drawn. And certainly that will not be something that's done apart from public understanding, but the public has voted for us to do this. So to enter into a lease with Black Earth, or excuse me, to enter into a lease with a vendor that we choose. So your questions are really on point, and I appreciate them. But I think that at this point, we need to choose an option, which is what the board's about to do, or a path, and then start to get into the concrete aspects of the contract based on what's chosen.
Okay.
So just to that point, we will then craft a draft of a contract, then that'll be before the board for final approval.
Okay, so hopefully that contract can be visible to citizens before you do your final vote.
Yeah, that becomes a public document.
It's a public document. We would put it up on the website.
But that's after you vote versus before?
No, Sandy, I don't want to get into going back and forth about exactly what's going to happen. The board does things transparently, and we would not vote on something that we held back from the town's ability to observe and read prior to us holding a vote. It's the board's responsibility at this point to make a decision and to help to draw the contract and to question, to deal with the contract. But we would never try and draw a contract like this up and keep it from townspeople so that we could vote on it on the slide. That's not the way this board has ever operated.
Okay, I
So-
just, that then I wouldn't have so
And
many
I'm going to
questions.
have to ask you that we're going to stop here. I have one, Andrew has his hand up and I would like to take a comment from him. Thank you for your question, Sandy. Andrew?
Okay. Yeah, I think all the things Sandy brings up are valid. You know, operating a compost site, like, yes, there is an impact. There is trucks. And I think this site is good because it's far away from residents and it's direct to the road. But like she says, that area is used by bikers and pedestrians. And I'd like to figure out ways to lessen impacts there. I'd like to speak with the Bike and Ped committee. I wasn't aware that there was one, but speak with them about what we can do down there to improve access and like prevent like conflict, because that's not what I want long term. As far as amount of material going in there, Greg is right. There's a certain limit. And that limit is going to be based on a permit from the DEP. And so there's public discussion around that, and we won't be able to go over that limit. And so there's the amount that we compost there, and then the amount that we transfer out of there. And the last thing about the money. So yes, we are asking that the town put money in, and like ideally this would cost the town nothing, but the project has cost more, like improving the landfill to meet state standards costs more, and the costs just keep going up, and the cost has fallen on Black Earth more and more. And so like we're about to spend $1.5 million when we were spending a lot less before. So that's why we have a cost. And like that cost does go into permanent improvements to the town. So about 600,000 of that goes to expand the site and, co-locate the yard waste drop off and the transfer station drop off. And it goes to putting material on top of the landfill to protect the cap, which you would need to do if you wanted to move the composting from School Street over to Pine Street. And whether you're doing food waste or not, to move that over and free up School Street, which is of value to the town, you would have to do that work. So we are putting money into the town into permanent improvements. And this should save the town money, and it hedges against long-term trash costs going up.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, Greg, so tonight, do you want us to vote on which options we want to go with and then move from there?
That would be helpful, yes.
Okay. All right, so can I get a motion regarding which option the board would like to entertain?
So I believe that- Go ahead.
I move that we authorize Greg to continue negotiating option 3.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Do we want to put into this motion anything regarding in the contract that the option would represent, that there was an ability to move towards option 4 in the future?
Yes.
This language gets a little bit confounding, but I want to simply say, within the contract, we want to have a path towards moving to option 4 for a very long lease that would be planned out and include town meeting input.
May I restate my motion?
You may. Actually, it's been seconded. I need Alan with his rules of order here. Go ahead, Ann.
So you can withdraw and start over.
Yeah, you can withdraw it. Ann.
I can withdraw my motion and restate it as we authorize Greg to continue negotiations with Black Earth for their option 3 with the provision that we have the ability to move to option 4 in the future.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so Ann's moved and Becky has seconded. Any further discussion? Alan's calling out, no, further discussion. Okay, so let's go to a vote. Eli?
No, I wasn't. Mr. Bowling votes yes.
Ann?
Ms. Harrison votes yes.
Mr. Round?
I vote yes.
Ms. Jakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bodmer Turner votes yes. And I apologize, Ann, for not addressing you as Ms. Harrison on the vote. Okay, so Greg, does that give you a clear direction to go?
Yeah, no, that's fine. And I'll just comment that the full RFP is on the website, and it has a sample contract and some of the questions and concerns that people have been raising. They can see it addressed through that RFP process.
Okay, and that's located where on the website?
Yeah, under DPW, under compost.
All right, so maybe Tiffany could, I don't want to overload the front page, the homepage of the web page, but put a button in for that because this is going to be a button issue.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, actually, Tiffany may have already done that. Actually, let me double check.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you, Andrew. And we will come to an end of this meeting, I promise. We have the consent agenda, and in the consent agenda, there are the Board of Selectmen minute meetings for the 7th of June, the 17th of June, and the 22nd of June. I assume that you've gotten your edits, corrections, and comments into Gail by now. We have a number of fund transfers. Greg, how do we handle that? Do we need to go over those fund transfers? Or
if you're comfortable with them, no. I mean, they're pretty self-explanatory.
So I will allow the board to put a hold on that in the consent agenda if they want to call out a particular issue. We have a letter of resignation from Gary Russell on the planning board. We have the fire contract approval, fire department contract approval for the union contract for the fire workers in Manchester-by-the-Sea. And we have Eagle Scout citations for, I want to say Finn, but I'm going to call it out the way it is, Finian Carlson and Christopher Meyer. Is there any of that people want to hold out? Okay, then can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Jakes and seconded by Ms. Harrison. Any discussion?
Yeah, well, quick item. Gary Russell's resignation letter from the planning board, schedule for reappointment.
Let's move the consent agenda and then I can bring that issue up and clarify it.
All right.
Okay. Actually, no, you're right, Eli. We should do that within the consent agenda. So at this point, the plan is to, I've been in touch with Ron earlier today with an email, and to have a joint meeting of the planning board and the Board of Selectmen on July 19th at the beginning of our agenda, to interview candidates for a one-year appointment or an appointment through the next town election for Gary Russell's position on the planning board. And I haven't heard back from Ron, but I did write to him this afternoon, and we will include that in our agenda. And the planning board will be posting a separate announcement of that agenda for July 19th.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, there he is. Hi, Ron.
Hi. I noticed on some of your appointments today, you were moving to make a decision at the following meeting. I was hoping at the joint meeting that we could interview potential candidates and make an appointment at that meeting if possible, because we have an even number of board members and we have a lot of work to do, and I would like to see someone fill that post as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you, Ron. Any objection from the Board of Selectmen for passing on the candidate at that meeting on the 19th?
No, I think that's necessary.
Okay.
Appropriate.
Okay. So the answer is yes, Ron. We will do that and not delay that appointment for 2 weeks while we, as we do with other appointments.
Thanks.
Okay. So now we need to vote on the consent agenda. If you're in favor of the consent agenda and your name is Ms. Harrison?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Round?
Yes.
Ms. Jakes?
Yes.
Mr. Bowling?
Yes.
Mr. Bonner Turner votes yes. Finally, we have correspondence, and there's two things in correspondence. I'm looking for something that I pulled out to do this. There it is. Okay. One of them is a letter from Comcast regarding regional sports networks, which is really, as Eli often says, real exciting reading. Notifying the board about their attempt to recover certain fees for sports events that were not broadcast during the pandemic. The other is a set of 5 police department commendations. These were commendations that were given by Chief Fitzgerald to 5 officers who participated in the investigation of the unfortunate recent stabbing that we had in Manchester. And I'm not going to read the commendations, but I do want to call out the 5 police officers from Manchester-by-the-Sea who were so commended. And that would be Patrolman Richard Shute, Patrolman Kevin Clary, Sergeant Christopher Locke, Lieutenant Mark McCoy, and Detective Michael Richard. And we thank them for their service and how quickly and efficiently they brought about an arrest, and in cooperation with other police departments on the North Shore. So thank you to Chief Fitzgerald and the Manchester Police, and particularly to those 5 officers who worked on that investigation. So that's correspondence. We come to the town administrator's report, and Greg, before you go into a big windup on that, I'd like to see if we could respond to Mr. Wilson's request first. You are mute. I can't hear you. You're not mute, but I can't hear you.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Was just hoping that we would be able to set a date for the special town meeting in the fall, sooner rather than later. And I think I had a conversation today with an informal conversation, not a meeting, with two members of the planning board and their consultant and Sue Brown, the town planner, about the planning board's intentions with respect to potential zoning amendments that they might bring forward. I'll defer to Ron to describe where the planning board is, but I think we did learn there were a couple of constraints in terms of timing for the meeting based on the availability of the planning board's consultant, Mr. Bobrowski. He will be out of the state from October 23rd until November 6th. And he expressed a strong preference for having the meeting during the week of November 8, because he has other personal commitments after that that would make it difficult for him to attend. He's going to be an essential participant in that meeting.
Okay, and you said he'd be out of the state. Can you give me those dates again, please?
From October 23rd until November 6th. And then he would prefer the week of November 8th because he will be basically unavailable after that week of November 8th for
Is he available, Alan, before that?
I think he is. I think he's available before October 23rd. He didn't express any issues prior to that.
Okay. Ron, it would help us if you know whether he is available before that or whether that's an open question, whether you could let us know.
Whether he is or isn't, I would prefer the longer time frame because we have, again, as you know, we're only a 6-person board. We have yet to decide what bylaws or what we want to do. We're actually polling each other now as to how we want to present the material.
Sure.
So we would prefer as much time as possible. So I would say November would be preferable to the board, I would think.
Okay, well, that's an important preference for us to take into consideration.
And Jeff, in terms of my travel plans, if we were to shoot for November 8th, which I think is a Monday, I can arrange to do our travel well before that and be back in plenty of time to prepare.
Okay. One question that I have is whether we're going to be able to, and it's my dear hope, to deal with the zoning bylaws and other important aspects of the town meeting agenda in one meeting. Becky? Okay. But we won't know that until we start to map it out. I think that we've heard from the planning board that they would like to go for the beginning of November. We've heard from the consultant that he would prefer November 8th. Is he going to need a lot of time to be brought up to speed on what's happened while he was out of town? Ron?
He knows all the issues. I guess the question is what the planning board decides to put forth at that meeting, if anything. So we're
Okay.
we're gonna go through that process soon. So I think Mark's pretty well versed in what we've been doing. He's done this. We've been 3 years on this. So.
Yep. Okay, great. Alan?
I certainly defer to Ron as to what the planning board may choose to do, but based on the discussion today, it's not clear whether they're going to bring everything forward for the special town meeting or perhaps defer some things until the spring. So I think in response to your question as to whether there would be sufficient room on the agenda for this meeting for other issues, non-planning board, non-zoning issues, I think the likelihood is yes.
likelihood that it could be held in one meeting?
Yes,
Yes, okay.
because I think some of the planning board, some of the zoning amendments, I'm just taking a wild guess here, may get deferred to the annual town meeting.
Okay. Any concerns or questions on the part of the Board of Selectmen with November 8th?
Yeah, as a point of information, when you say one meeting, do you mean one night? Or actually, I'm not sure if there's a constraint on special town meetings if they occur within one day or not, or whether or not you simply wouldn't support a meeting that would span 2 days.
Are you asking me, Eli?
Yes, I am.
There is no legal constraint against a 2-night special town meeting. We could go 2 nights. I don't know what else might be on the agenda other than zoning. So I can't really say whether it might take more than one night.
Item that we need to address. The one item we need to address is the Chabaco Road question.
Yes. The article that we passed over in the annual town.
Yes. I mean, if all that were on the warrant were that and some, but not all, of the potential zoning amendments, I would be very surprised if we couldn't do it in one night.
Okay. Any other concerns of the Board of Selectmen for November 8th?
Jeff, if I may,
Go ahead, Becky.
I will not be here. So that's all. Doesn't mean anything, but I won't be here.
Okay. Any other board members have a potential conflict or a concern about the November 8th time?
Nope, I'd support it.
Fine.
Okay.
I'd like to have the full board there.
Becky,
November 15th.
what are your,
Well, first is November 15th. Pushing too close to the holiday.
Yeah, it's the third Thursday, right?
It's actually the 25th.
Oh, it's the 25th. Never mind, sorry.
Not the 25th Thursday, but the 25th of the month.
Yeah.
I don't have a
thought-
problem with the 15th.
I thought that the consultant said he was not available after the week of the 8th.
Right.
He had a strong preference for the week of the 8th. He has a commitment that he needs to deal with sometime after that, but he didn't say
Okay.
whether or not the next week was impossible.
Okay. Then I think that we are going to try and, because the major item on this agenda is going to be whatever zoning bylaws are brought forth. Changes to the zoning bylaws are brought forth. And and so we will, I think, be constrained to the 8th. Because I don't want to have to go back and forth with this, waiting 2 weeks to check with the consultant to see whether he's available for the 15th. And Becky, did you say you were available on the 15th?
Yes.
I think we need to vote tonight. Greg, I can't hear you.
Hear me?
That's better.
I think you need to have it as a preliminary discussion and finalize it at your next meeting, just because it was not a formal agenda item.
Okay. So our preliminary discussion is that we would like to have it on November 8th. We will finalize this in our agenda for the next meeting. Thank you, Greg. Okay. Town administrators report.
I will go through this quickly. You have
The Reader's Digest version.
Reader's Digest version. We need to think about, talking about calendars, we don't need to do it tonight, but be thinking about when we might schedule a selectmen's workshop to look at priorities and do a little assessment on how things have gone and what improvements you would like to make in terms of process. So be thinking of potential dates that might work in the next few weeks would be my recommendation.
This is a comment on that. The last year's meeting was on July 11th and it was on a Saturday morning.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just interrupt, if you don't need me further, I will sign off.
You're the chair, Jeff.
I am the chair. I'm trying to see whether I need Alan. I need Alan all the time, but
well, thank you.
But Alan needs to get to bed. So you don't have to participate in our BOS retreat. You may leave, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a good evening.
Thank you for coming and thank you for hanging in.
Admire your persistence.
I'm hoping that we don't have to persist this long in future meetings.
Isn't that Elizabeth Warren's campaign slogan for her next election?
Right. Nevertheless, she persisted, but I don't want to keep persisting.
No way.
Okay. Go ahead, Greg. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Not a problem. Staffing, we're working on.
Good night,
some
Alan.
We're working on some new hirings, looking at a grants and special projects coordinator, and we'll be working on that. A few other updates for you there. On the construction side, the state finished up the temporary repairs to the railroad overpass on Harbor Street. Luckily, that was in time for a very busy red, white, and blue day, which was quite successful despite some cool, misty weather. The state will be coming back and doing a more extensive repair to that bridge, and they're also working on the intersection of Harbor and Bridge Street. But we don't have dates for any of that yet. We'll keep you posted. And some of our new work will be going out to bid soon for later construction dates in the late summer, fall. I have some good news to report, at least it's advancing. We have a large grant proposal into the federal government, the FEMA, under their BRIC program. And this is for the Center Street culvert. We've made it past the first round. We're advancing to the second round. And we're the only New England project that's competing for this money. It is a national grant competition, but it's encouraging that we have made it to the next round and that we are the flagship project for New England at this point. We will be meeting with Representative Seth Moulton this coming Friday. And if a couple of you would like to join me with that meeting, please let me know. Myself and hope to have Chuck with us and maybe Nate to talk about more details of that project with the representative.
I'll be there.
That's great. He's been supportive of the project. He wants to learn a little bit more about it, a little more detail as it advances.
I can make that too. Yep.
I can be there. I'll be there.
We have to be careful we don't get a quorum.
Okay, then I won't be there.
Oh, you know what?
Big straws.
I'll withdraw myself then. Go in.
1:30 at Town Hall?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Under the rapid recovery efforts, this is a joint effort with Essex, helping businesses have a successful summer and beyond. Some improvement ideas are materializing. We'll have a more formal presentation on those ideas, hopefully at your next meeting on the 19th. And then again, some good news on the funding end. It's not a sure bet yet, but thanks to Senator Tarr, he put in a request in the state budget to help with the Cape Ann Climate Coalition, and that's advancing, and that should help advance the work of the coalition and particularly bring on board the the group from Harvard to help us do some deeper dives into some options we may want to pursue as we contemplate some rising seas and bigger storms. So again, more on that later, but it is good news as it seems to be advancing. So that's enough for tonight, and I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you, Greg. I appreciate the board's enthusiasm wanting to go and meet with Seth Moulton at this late hour in the meeting. But thank you for stepping forward. Okay, any other concerns that have not been reasonably anticipated by the chair?
One question, Mr. Chairman, I guess, and that is that the next meeting is also the dispatch discussion, correct?
Yes.
And I would like to go and visit that dispatch location in Middleton at some point. Has anyone from the board been there?
No, but I agree, John. I would too.
Okay.
I was there when it was first stood up.
Well, it was several years ago. Was this when it was under different management?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'd like to set something up and go and visit there sometime in the next several days.
Yeah, we can help. We can help set something.
All right, Greg, I'll be in touch and we'll see if we can't put something together here.
Yeah, well, they welcome that. They have offered.
I'm sure they do. I'd like to get some perspective.
Sure. Yeah, we'll help set that up.
Yep.
So if I might suggest, you said in the next couple of days, that might be a little bit dicey. The beginning of the week, John?
Next week?
Or at the end of this week, maybe?
The end of this week would be better for me. Next week starts to get a little dicey for me, but Thursday, Friday, yeah, and anytime.
Becky, you expressed an interest.
I would like to go, but I'm working all week. I could either go on the 10th or the 16th, but other than that, I'm working.
Okay.
Are they open on weekends?
But they're open 24/7.
I thought that was the case, but not weekends.
Well,
sorry.
The question is whether the administration is.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, might we go without a chaperone?
I'm talking about their administration.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the center's administration.
Understand.
So if you're considering Greg a chaperone, we need to talk. Eli, are you interested?
I'm interested. I'm not really available Friday. Probably not Thursday either, but that's all right. I have been there. I have a pretty clear picture of what that site is and the technology that they have there.
Okay, John, is there a reason why you wanted to go next couple of days as opposed to?
But I'm probably not here Monday. I could probably do next Tuesday, maybe Wednesday morning, but that's about it. Then I'm gone Thursday, Friday.
Thursday, Friday, the 15th and 16th.
That's correct. That's not good. And probably the last half of Wednesday too.
Okay.
So it's just a narrow window next week, probably Tuesday and the first part of Wednesday.
Okay, well,
We'll see what we can do for Tuesday, a week from today.
That's fine.
Okay. Any other matters
I
that
will
were
not
not
make that.
reasonably anticipated by the chair at 10:06?
Ron's hand is up. Ron's hand is up.
Ron,
Just a point of order, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. On the joint meeting, could we be on the agenda kind of, first? So we're not sitting around,
so you're not sitting around waiting for your time?
Well,
you mean, you want a privilege that's stronger than Alan Wilson?
Well, just judging by how long your meetings go, it would be nice if we could just be, kind of one of the.
Our meetings are not going to go this long, Ron, in the future.
Okay, understood.
Yes,
Just to-
the plan was to have you on at 6:30.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
At least that's my plan. Okay, and I would entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn? Don't mind if I do.
Second.
Oh, actually, I was gonna,
Second.
a motion for, who's gonna go out to get the pizza? No, motion to adjourn.
Ann moved it, I seconded.
No, no,
Thank you.
Eli moved it.
Eli definitely moved it.
Yeah.
All right, any discussion?
Yeah. Thank you,
No
Jeff.
discussion, good. So, I'll take a vote, please. Mr. Bowling,
Yep.
Mrs. Jakes,
Yes, please.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Round,
Yes.
Mr. Bob Turner votes yes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gail. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Greg. Bye.
Thank you, Greg.
Bye-bye.
Good night, all.
Good night.